totally embarrassing.
Hey, sweetheart, how'd you like to take a ride on a real bike?
She's 16.
Cartoon dads. Has there ever been a less appealing class of people? Now, there's been plenty of cartoon dads over the years, okay? Many shows have had them, but at the end of the day, they've always typically fallen into two categories. The incompetent father, who means well, often the butt of the joke, and the hardworking, stressed out, may need to take a chill pill variety, often the butt of the joke. But do you get what I mean? The animated father archetype is hard to subvert. Even the most legitimately clever shows struggle with overcoming the stereotype. Despite all those hardships, though, there are a few standout examples of animated fathers that break out of these chains. Bob Belcher from Bob's Burgers, Nigel Thornberry, who I swear to God is his own creature. I've never seen or heard anyone like this in my entire life. He's amazing. Greg Universe before his baggage. The list goes on. But out of all of these lovable dads, who deserves the crown? Who is the ultimate cartoon dad king? Who works the absolute hardest to support their children in every way possible? Who's actually there to listen? Now, you could probably point to any of these aforementioned dads and say they fit this bill, but there's one cartoon dad I've yet to mention that stands above the rest. One that's proven time and time again that he is the ultimate cartoon father. And if we're being honest with ourselves, it's Heinz Doofenshmirtz. I know, right? Were you expecting that? Haha, maybe that's the point, stupid. But this might throw you off guard a little bit, considering that he is technically a villain, sort of. The series changed a lot, but I'm being 100% honest here. Not only was Heinz able to come to terms with his own childhood trauma and completely change the direction of his life because of his daughter, all because he was willing to communicate with her. Tell me, what other cartoon dad has done that? Not only listen to their children, but read their advice and follow it as well. Not just the other way around. Heinz manages to actually treat his daughter as an equal in that regard. We have been binging some old Phineas and Ferb lately during quarantine, so we want to give Doof the respect he deserves alongside the series as a whole. So without further ado, guys, let me try to convince you that Doofenshmirtz is the best dad.
It all began on the day of my actual birth. Both of my parents failed to show up.
Heinz Doofenshmirtz is a troubled individual riddled with childhood trauma and a career that isn't exactly healthy or normal. A huge part of the character's identity is his cosmically tragic, low-key hilarious backstories. Born in Gimmelstump, alone in a hospital, as his parents didn't even put in the effort to show up to his own birth. If you're wondering how that's physically possible, just don't. There's no answer that will ever satisfy you. And it only gets wilder as he spent every following birthday alone, throwing parties for himself at a knockoff Chuck E. Cheese. Every birthday cake he's ever made consumed by Doonkleberry bats. At one point, his family disowned him, wearing paper bags in public. He had to become a lawn gnome. He was replaced with a dog named Only Son. Lived with a family of ocelots at one point. His brother became the favorite. He lost Balloony, went on awkward dates with Phineas's mom Linda. He had a divorce. All of this is no joke, only scratching the surface of the trauma Doofenshmirtz has been through. Literally, until we kind of meet him in the series, he's only exclusively taken L's. Poor man, give him a break. You would imagine he'd be rotten to the core in every single aspect. Yet Doof is an example of someone who's a better, stronger person because of what they endured. Instead of being influenced by the toxic behavior in horrid situations that never stopped kicking him while he was down, and thanks to the movie Across the Second Dimension, we know just how bad Doofenshmirtz would have turned out under much smaller conditions. Literally, he only lost a toy train and he became actually evil. That just shows how incredible this Doof is under even more pressure. It's insane. Now, I know what you're gonna say. Doofenshmirtz is an evil villain. Every episode, he's trying to do something bad. What are you talking about? You're an idiot. And yes, all of those things are true. I am an idiot. But I want to say that even though Doofenshmirtz is a bad guy, doesn't mean he's a bad guy. You know what I mean? Let me redeem him a little bit. I could point to the fact that he literally stopped being a villain by the end of the series and decided to fight for good, or the fact that literally all of his plans were just to take over a small area of land, and none of them were violent or that threatening at all. But no, I will concede a little bit. Okay, he was a bad person, and to an extent, he was influenced by his childhood, not as much as I think he could have been, but it still led him in the wrong path. But there's still plenty of examples in this series of Doofenshmirtz being an incredible person, and deep down, a truly genuine one. Spa Day had him head over heels for the cutest kitten ever, and he ended up giving the cat back to their proper owner. I couldn't even do that. That was a cute kitten, man. I would have kept it all to myself. Doofenshmirtz is one of the most kind-hearted antagonists you'll meet in fiction, often gunning to eliminate pet peeves and rarely actually endangering anybody but himself. Another assumption is that he'd be horrible to women, or at least bitter towards them, but we know he's actually not that bad of a date in his younger years, and his ex-wife Charlene doesn't have anything against him. She'll bust his balls a bit, but she divorced him simply because they wanted different things and didn't mesh that well. The straw that broke the camel's back was literally a sock puppet named Mr. Tomato. But they're super civil, they communicate, and for a divorced couple, I think that's better than most. While Doof seems like a decent guy to hang around minus the whole tri-state agenda, the most telling component of his soul lies within his parenting skills. Real talk, it's easy for the effects of poor parenting to carry over into the next generation. Victims growing up treating their children in similar ways without even realizing it. It can become a nasty, vicious cycle. Yet in 1992, Hines received what he considered the biggest blessing in his life, the birth of his daughter, his only child, Vanessa Doofenshmirtz. In spite of all of the suffering he endured, Hines decided to start his biggest venture yet, focusing all of his energy, whenever possible, into being there for his daughter and providing her with as much support as possible. That's some real hero stuff. Hines does his best to keep Vanessa involved with his life, viewing Evil Incorporated as a quote family business, and often bringing Vanessa to work, which in itself is a subversion of the hardworking, stressed out dad trope, because he's never too busy with an innator to spend time with his daughter, instead wanting his innators to be a fun learning experience with her. He may be practicing villainy, but he's trying to turn it into a bonding experience with his child. That's 8 levels of crazy. However, his dedication to involving her with his work can get excessive, such as the special Summer Belongs to You, when Hines kidnaps Major Monogram, which yes is illegal, bringing him and thus his work to what was supposed to be a private vacation between father and daughter. He's not perfect. Kidnapping's illegal, but that just makes Doofenshmirtz human. Compensating for the lack of his family honoring his own birthday, Doof always went above and beyond to give her extravagant birthday parties, despite the fact that she was never that into them. She always viewed his parties for her as flops, but he never gave up, bouncing back with another party every year. The greatest demonstration of this is the episode Dude, We're Getting the Band Back Together. Doofenshmirtz goes all out for Vanessa's 16th birthday. The man recruits his own sworn enemy, Perry the Platypus, to help with setting up the party, and then awkwardly straps Perry to a giant firecracker as the grand finale. But look at this layout. Giant presents and inflatable characters scattered about. Call up MTV for a revival because this is a Sweet 16, okay? The situation illustrates how precious Vanessa is to Doofenshmirtz and how much he wants to right the wrongs of his childhood, because the party ends up being way too kiddie for Vanessa's liking. But of course, he coddles her and goes way too overboard, overstepping his boundaries by projecting onto her with his desire to blow up a platypus, referring to him as our nemesis, and violating her privacy by going through her address book and inviting all of her friends. Of course, Vanessa is embarrassed and upset, but instead of getting angry or calling her ungrateful, most parents would immediately jump to comparing the parties they throw for their child to the ones they were given growing up, saying you have it so much better. But Doof is just bummed out, looking at the party as another failure. He does take out his anger on Perry, which isn't healthy, okay? But never once does he direct his negative feelings towards his daughter, and that's important. This remains consistent throughout the entire series. He may be a sociopath, but he's a good dad, okay? That's all I'm trying to say. Luckily, things work out as Doof's brawl with Perry results in the party setup being trashed, which brings a vibe that Vanessa's friends are down for. And Vanessa informs her friends that this is because of her dad. She had no part in how awesome it turned out, and she's appreciative of her father's work. Not to mention this entire time, Vanessa stayed, which is a big part of her character that matters. She's not one to just abandon her father when she's fed up with him. Granted, especially earlier on in the series, she'd tune him out and give him a hard time, which is displayed in Tree to Get Ready, in which she suggests that summer school would be more enjoyable than spending time with her father, which that can't possibly be true, okay? You may be crazy, but I would take crazy science experiments and sci-fi inventions over a Scantron like any day. At the end of the day, however, she recognizes his efforts and stays by his side. Another amazing example of Doof going above and beyond for his daughter, and Vanessa acknowledging this, is in season 2, specifically the episode Finding Mary McGuffin. This is a good episode, it's gonna come up again later. At the age of 7, Vanessa had an intense desire for a Mary McGuffin doll, and Doof granted her one 10 years later. Vanessa is impressed he remembered for that long, only for Doof to explain he never stopped looking for a decade straight. The doll was discontinued. He searched for a discontinued doll continuously for an entire decade, in an age where online shopping wasn't quite where it is today, you know what I mean? That's actually insane. Name one other cartoon father who puts in that much effort. Homer Simpson? Huh? Look at yourself, you look goofy right now. Get those trash opinions out of here. But how does Vanessa actually feel about her father? Well, again, in the beginning of the series, she's a lot more apprehensive about being around him, often trying to bust him for all of his evil inventions to her mother, which was one of the first characters who sees Doofenshmirtz for who he really is, believing that no one can truly be evil. And Hines doesn't meet the criteria for a villain anyways. Vanessa doesn't hate her father, despite being frequently embarrassed by him. She just wants him to do better. She doesn't want him to hurt people and become someone genuinely sinister past the point of no return, and she doesn't want him to be the epitome of an embarrassing dad, though deep down she understands it comes from great intent. intentions and his own screwed up childhood. Over time, their relationship does improve though. She takes a greater interest in his inventions despite her moral opposition, and she even dabbles in a bit of her own villainy, refusing to give up the doll to a little girl after fighting with Candace. Another huge win for Doof in relation to his daughter comes in Summer Belongs to You, where after some hijinks, Doof makes up for his shortcomings by traveling halfway around the world as fast as possible to retrieve Vanessa in Paris, putting her before his work. After all she wanted was to spend time with him, a huge upgrade from where they stood prior. I don't know a lot of teenage girls that want to hang out with their dad, period. Vanessa isn't the only one who comes around and grows though. The season 3 episode Skidly Whiffers finds Doof supervising a camp trip for Vanessa and her friends, embarrassing her all throughout, being overbearing and protective. Eventually, Vanessa stands up to her father and expresses, although she understands, she's smothered. Now, this is an unhinged man who spends every day trying to take over the tri-state area, but instead of getting mad, like even remotely, Hines actually listens, swearing to no longer be overprotective, and although he has his moments, he does legitimately back off in the following episodes, which in return, he sees a great improvement. That doesn't mean he won't get involved when necessary. The climax of Skidly Whiffers features Vanessa and her friends approached by a swarm of bees, and whereas most of these cartoon dads would stay away, Hines covers himself in honey and lures the bees into a lake as he dives off of a cliff into it. He could have died. Just keep that in mind. All in the name of protecting his daughter. Name a better king, I cannot. Season 3 really puts in the elbow grease to show how much their relationship improved and how much they influence one another. After Vanessa dumps Johnny in the episode Minor Monogram, which of course introduces Major Monogram's son Monty, Hines ironically remarks that Vanessa needs to stop dating the bad boy type, going for the wrong crowd, and Vanessa confesses later that her inclination for bad boys is a result of her father's aspirations as a villain. She gets screwed over by Rodrigo, Doof's evil apprentice, who of course is more rotten than Doof, and finds herself attracted to Monty Monogram after he swoops in to save the day. The two go on a date, showcased in the episode Sipping with the Enemy. Agent P works with her to cover up the date, but Monty's disrespect towards Doof doesn't fly with Vanessa. She stands up for her dad and recognizes where he succeeds in his profession despite the incompetence. They continue to see each other through due to clicking in all other aspects and loving the thrill of secrecy, as shown in season 4 with the episode My Sweet Ride. The last piece of this family puzzle before the series finale arrives in season 4 with the episode Doof 101, where Doof is forced to become the new science teacher at Vanessa's school as community service. By the way, this is one of the few episodes to take place outside of summer. Doof mentions it in a small song, and it's incredible. It almost brings these two back to square one, Vanessa afraid of being embarrassed, while Doof views it as a great way to get a more father and daughter time. Long story short, Doof screws up and mutates Johnny, Vanessa's ex, but he manages to save the day with assistance from Harry. Vanessa, instead of being furious, ultimately settles on an optimistic approach, just requesting for her dad to not make mutations and insane experiments an everyday thing, which arguably it shouldn't be, because it's crazy. I really recommend watching this episode for yourself. It's the best way to see how much these characters have grown over the summer going into fall. Better than it can be to just put it into words at least. But the biggest influence Vanessa had over Doof, the last thing that really puts a bow on Doof being the greatest cartoon dad, is the finale, Last Day of Summer. At first, Hines and Vanessa have the biggest wedge between them. For the first time, Doof is too busy to communicate with Vanessa, and she eventually is able to reveal the information that she's moving in with her mother permanently. That's tough. Doof blames himself for being a lame villain, but Vanessa establishes it's because he's a villain that she's moving out, because she's achieved an internship at OWCA and can't live with her top number 3 enemy. This coincides with Doof's biggest scheme to conquer the tri-state area. After realizing such a position doesn't actually exist, he invents the Tri-Governorinator, which would make him Tri-Governor of the tri-state area and thus able to rule it. This is alongside the Do-Overinator, which allows Doof to restart the day whenever he desires, although it just happens to be the last day of summer, and then timelines get meddled, people start disappearing. It's an entire ordeal, but in between dealing with that, Doof finally gets to rule the tri-state area and feels underwhelmed. This causes Vanessa to bring everything full circle and call out that his occupation only exists because of his crummy childhood. And he's not an evil person, rather a good guy pretending to be evil because it feels like he has to be. Society should have completely jokered up Hines, but that's just not who he is at his core. Again, I point to another version of him from across the second dimension, where he literally is a threatening supervillain. Look at that scar, look at that eye patch, it's scary. All because he lost a toy train. Way less of a reason. That's 1/1000th of the trauma that Hines has been through, and despite all of it, he never turned into a real villain. So after his ultimate failure and achieving his dream, he tries to be a good guy, saving reality as a whole. Then he realizes he's not that great at being a good guy either. He needs direction. He's brave enough to be vulnerable and admit that not just to his daughter, but himself. Vanessa points him in that direction, OWCA, leading him into the OWCA file special, but that's a video for another time. But that ultimately completed Doofenshmirtz's entire arc for the series. His entire arc, from villain to good guy, was accompanied by his developing relationship with his daughter, one that stayed healthy the whole time throughout many hardships. And in the end, it was his relationship with his daughter that ended up saving him from his biggest problem, his villainy. Throughout the series, Heinz was a good, caring communicator. He listened to his daughter and respected her wishes, which are all good qualities of the best cartoon dad. And in the end, it was his good fathering skills that turned his whole life around. There's been a lot of good cartoon dads, okay? I'm not gonna say there isn't. But I've never seen a cartoon dad like Heinz Doofenshmirtz, who manages to break all of the bonds and tell an actual realistic story between father and daughter in a divorced relationship. It's all at once hopeful and wholesome and hard, and that's what fatherhood is, represented by this guy with this goofy ass head. Doofenshmirtz may be a bad villain, but he's not a bad dad.
Despite Gravity Falls being focused squarely on the town itself, you'd be surprised how deeply connected it is to other shows in both a meta and literal sense. A handful of Gravity Falls alumni branched out to create their own shows that not only have a similar vibe and structure to the iconic Disney series, but have Alex Hirsch involved in some way. Executive producer, voicing a main character, voicing a side character. You get the picture. But some of these shows have crossed over Gravity Falls in pretty big ways. From major characters having ties with one another, to an entire episode of television being dedicated to the madman that is Stanley Pons. I've talked about most of these crossovers over the years, but with Gravity Falls popping off and gaining new fans every day, alongside most of these shows being over and giving us some new stuff to chew on since I last spoke about them, I thought it'd be great to revisit all of these Easter eggs and connections, compiling them into one big crash course, your guide to the Gravity Falls multiverse. I'm gonna leave out small things like Bill Cipher's cameo in The Simpsons or a pine tree hat popping up in a cartoon, and focus on the big stuff. Things that have interesting lore implications and tells us something new about the cast of Gravity Falls, despite coming from an entirely different show. The first show Gravity Falls crossed over with actually wasn't a Disney show, and I feel like the further away we get from the 2010s, the more people forget the connections with this cartoon even existed in the first place, which is kinda crazy because it arguably has the most ties with Gravity Falls. I am of course talking about Rick and Morty. It all started with the end credit stinger for Society of the Blind Eye, where Stan loses a mug, a notepad, and a pen to Ford's portal. As it turns out, they weren't just lost in a void. In Rick and Morty's Close Encounters of the Rick Kind, a classic by the way, Rick and Morty are being chased by the Council of Ricks, leading to Rick opening numerous portals to throw them off his trail. And guess what comes out of one of those portals? Stan's belongings. Now, Close Encounters of the Rick Kind actually aired 6 whole months before Society of the Blind Eye, so viewers were exposed to this crossover out of order. I can only imagine Rick and Morty fans were scrambling to figure out what these items meant, unaware that in a few months, they'd be tying it back to a kid's cartoon on Disney XD. Now, I think we're supposed to infer from a lot of these Easter eggs that Rick and Ford are friends. Like, they got an interdimensional bromance going on. Or they hate each other. Either one would make sense. They're two loner scientists with a soft spot for their family. So while Rick was just firing off random dimensions, a part of me wonders if the Gravity Falls universe was calibrated into Rick's portal gun because years prior, he was trying to do Ford a solid and get him back home, when Ford was traversing the multiverse. Ford's wanted poster has a cipher that when decoded reads, Rick was here, which I feel like he'd only do for someone he knows personally, whether if that's a rival or a buddy. Not to mention the episode Morty's Mind Blowers features memory bowls labeled Stanford and Bill C, meaning that either Rick or Morty had memories of the two that were erased. Maybe Morty somehow found out about Ford and Bill's existence, the whole dilemma they got going on, and to ensure that Morty would never be tempted to contact Bill, Rick wiped his memory. Because let's face it, Morty loves his dangerous and irresponsible shenanigans. Or maybe Ford's intelligence got under Rick's skin. So to preserve his own ego, he removed Ford from his memory. Conversely, there's a memory capsule in the black market labeled Rick S in the graphic novel Gravity Falls Lost Legends. So either Rick came to Gravity Falls at some point and was caught slipping by the blind eye, or Ford somehow got his hands on the memory gun and for whatever reason, wiped Rick's mind. Maybe the two realized their minds and knack for adventure would cause way too much chaos across the multiverse and decided to cut their bromance short, wiping each other's memories clean and staying in their respective worlds. Or since this is Morty's mind blowers, maybe Morty learned about Ford and thought he sounded pretty cool. But Rick couldn't risk Morty idolizing a cool but bitter old man who's really smart and isn't his grandpa. So he zapped Ford's name right out of Morty's head. I know there's no clear answer to all of this, but it's fun to think about. Some Bill Cipher imagery pops up throughout the show, which is cool, because Bill can see through any depiction of himself, regardless of the reality, which means he's definitely keeping an eye on the Sanchez family. Rick's portal gun is exactly the kind of technology that Bill would kill to get his hands on, and it wouldn't be hard to trick any of the Smith family into making a deal, barring Rick and Space Beth. So it tracks that he keep an eye on them, but he hasn't mustered the courage to actually make a move because he knows Rick would catch on to his act fast. And on the topic of Bill, one of his henchmaniacs, 8-Ball, can actually be spotted dead and decaying in an alien spa's toxin tank in the episode Rest and Rick Laxation. However, this machine actually removes the toxicity from your body, leaving it as a sentient goopy clone of yourself. So odds are, 8-Ball just came to the spa and used the tank to expel the part of himself that was willing to incite an apocalypse and go on like a week-long rager, even though time was frozen. Homie's trying to better himself. That's probably why none of the henchmaniacs have called Bill while he's in the Theraprism. They're trying to leave that in the past, bro. Also, 8-Ball's alive in Lost Legends, so yeah, this is definitely not his actual dead body. We also know that there's a Dipper Morty and a Mabel Morty out there in the multiverse, as they were spotted in the Citadel of Ricks, and Mabel Morty pops back up in Lost Legends. Despite these two fitting in the greater Rick and Morty mythos, their existence actually connects to the next show that crossed over with Gravity Falls, Amphibia. I don't know how many Gravity Falls fans have seen Amphibia. Like, if you're an Amphibia fan, odds are you're into Gravity Falls, but I don't know how often it's the other way around. Which is a shame, because the show was created by a Gravity Falls alumni, Matt Brawley, who gave us that insane scene from the Gulf War. You know, the one with Big Henry. Amphibia has some pretty cool lore and a whole ass crossover episode of Gravity Falls, Wax Museum, the episode that concludes the road trip arc that kicked off season 2. Ann and the Planters have almost reached Newtopia, the capital of Amphibia that may have the answer to getting Ann back home. But they make one more stop, a small town named Stony Gulch, and it isn't long before they wind up at the Curiosity Hut, an alternate universe version of the Mystery Shack ran by Mr. Pons and his trusty janitor, Frog Zeus. But this is a universe where Stan never took in Dipper and Mabel for a summer, so he's a lot more corrupt and money hungry. Whereas the Stan we know and love has a lot of fake attractions at the Mystery Shack, all the attractions Mr. Pons has in the Curiosity Hut are real monsters. They're just encased in wax. Anne, not knowing any better, volunteers to be one of Mr. Pons' attractions so she can obtain a CD player from Earth that somehow winded up in Amphibia. Mr. Pons tries to blindside her, only to get his comeuppance as all the monsters are freed from the wax and kills him.
Calm down, everyone. It's just wax.
Except for that curator. He's dead.
No, this is cute as its own 11-minute thing, but there's a joke from Frog Zeus that, as a certified lore whore, I can't help but read into.
Say, Mr. Pons, do you ever get the feeling that we exist simultaneously in multiple parallel universes, completely unaware of the other's very existence?
Frog Zeus ponders that they exist in every reality, something that's not only validated by Gravity Falls itself, but Dipper Morty and Mabel Morty. I'd like to think that this ties back into the Bill Cipher Zodiac, that if you're a symbol on the wheel, you exist in every reality, and you're pretty easy to identify. And on the topic of Bill, he appears in a book called Dr. P's Guide to Magic and Mystery. When Amphibia was still on the air, a lot of fans speculated that Dr. P could be short for Dr. Pines, and that this book was written by Ford or an older Dipper. But now that the series is finished, I'm pretty sure it was written by a character named Leaf. Without going into too much detail, she was able to traverse the multiverse for a bit, although as far as we know, she only came to Earth and then back to Amphibia. It makes sense she's aware of Bill, since she was able to travel the multiverse. He probably saw her as another opportunity to unleash Wyrmageddon and made contact with her. But thankfully, she knew better than to work with him. Amphibia's big bad, the Core, is also currently in the Theraprism, after having its ass handed to it by Anne. I almost feel bad for Bill. A hive mind of narcissists is a lot to deal with, but hey, he's no better. Also, you know how Bill has beef with the Time Baby and tries to kiss the axolotl's ass? Well, I think there's another god out there who he's aware of and vice versa. The Guardian. aka the Three Stones deity, amphibious god who might be overseeing the entire Disney TVA multiverse. If I had to guess though, the Guardian's not fond of Bill, considering how disappointed it is in mortals for handling the power of the Calamity Stones irresponsibly. All Bill does is use his godly power irresponsibly.
How about this?
Let's move on to our last show, The Owl House. Not only created by the incredibly talented Dana Terrace, but it features Alex Hirsch voicing two prominent characters, and it's a show that directly references Amphibia. And his appearance on Earth is randomly acknowledged in it. I like to think that all of these shows take place on the same Earth, different states just have different art styles. A lot of early teases for The Owl House actually came from Gravity Falls Lost Legends, in the story that Dana helped illustrate. There's a wanted poster of Ida the Owl Lady, and somehow Albert, Ida's palisman, ended up far away from home. Somebody save my boy from the Gravity Falls black market! Of course, the biggest and most well-known connection between Gravity Falls and the Owl House is that, in a shocking twist, Ida is actually Stan's ex-wife. I've made a whole video about this that you can check out, but Ida has a track record for traversing between Earth and the demon realm, stirring up trouble and swindling the masses. And she did this under the alias of Marilyn, which just happens to be the fake name of Stan's ex-wife, who he describes as having pale skin and a sharp tooth, wearing a shirt that says, "Over 30 and very flirty." Sound familiar? Also, this is not a website.com describes Marilyn as cursed and goat tooth. And I mean, yeah, Ida is both of those things. It's definitely her. According to Stan, they got married in Vegas, but it only lasted for a weekend. She just wanted his money in his car. Aw, Ida, why'd you have to do him like that? Well, Stan's a con artist, so I guess it's just karma. I should also touch on an old theory that King from the Owl House is actually a reincarnation of Bill Cipher, both being voiced by Alex, the axolotl saying Bill would be reincarnated as a different form in a different time, King allegedly wielding immense power by having large gaps in his memory. It was a fun idea that people had just enough to work with. But now that we know what really happened to Bill, and what King's whole deal is, it's safe to say that the theory is dead in the water. The Owl House definitely has the fewest direct Easter eggs of the three, but it's still very easy to rationalize why all of these universes are connected. At the end of the day, it's just fun to think that the characters of all these cartoons I adore can coexist. I think people can be soured on the idea now because of the MCU-fication of Hollywood, but I grew up with Cartoon Network and those little CD bumpers they used to have, so I've always ate this kind of stuff up. It'd be nice if at least the Disney shows could have an official crossover one day that isn't just Chibiverse. No shade to Chibiverse, I like Chibiverse, but give me something a little more Jimmy Timmy Power Hour. Everyone loves a good villain, especially a good Disney villain. But unfortunately, they feel a bit harder to come by these days. A few years ago, a lot of Disney and Pixar movies fell into the trend of having twist villains that weren't really that great of a twist. And recent films like Route Breaks the Internet, Onward, and Soul don't really have an antagonist. I'm not saying that villains are being phased out entirely, but I find that conflicts in entertainment are leaning more and more into moral ambiguity. Not just in film, but all across the board. Movies, television, video games, no matter where you look, more and more stories are pivoting in this direction. And I suppose it makes sense. The media we consume sticks with us. I suppose the presence of a clear-cut villain likely leads to the impression that a lot of conflicts in the real world are black and white. It's human nature to view ourselves as the main character to a certain degree. Thus, consuming stories where the main character is constantly presented as a clear-cut good guy, triumphing over whoever they're in conflict with, said foe typically presented as an objective evil, it may lead to people not having the healthiest assessment of a real-world situation. Even when the good guy is chock full of flaws, and the villain shows traces of humanity. If anything, it may just reinforce the idea that whoever we oppose is in the wrong, with minimal room for nuance. In actuality, there needs to be a balance. It should be made clear that yes, not every situation is black and white. But at the same time, viewers need to be reminded that there is still evil out in the world. That some people will get a second chance, third chance, fourth chance, fifth chance, and so on, misusing those opportunities every single time. And while Disney and Pixar's films may be lacking in the villain department recently, there is absolutely no shortage in the television department. In recent years, we've had villains like Bill Cipher, Varian, Cassandra, Toffee. I'm not caught up with DuckTales, but I know they have a few villains. Yeah, that one right there on screen. Yeah, I know their name. And recent installments have brought us Grimes, Sasha, King Andreas, Emperor Bellows. That one villain from the Owl House with a funny name. Is it Tibbles? I think it's Tibbles.
Tiblet Tibbly Grinhammer the Third!
bad!
An array of villains that can range from clear-cut evil to complex and misguided. All of them have their own motivations that arguably make sense. At the very least, the audience is able to comprehend why the antagonist feels that way, even when we still disagree with them. And I love that these villains are larger than life, because despite all their quirks and dark backstories that make them who they are still representative of ideologies, actions, and fates to avoid. But today, I don't want to talk about those larger-than-life villains. They can wait. I want to talk about the kind of villain that we know exists in the real world. The kind of person who has the power and resources to make a big difference in the community around them and help out the little guy, but instead uses those resources to oppress and control others. The kind of person who, when they feel humiliated, will resort to any means necessary in an attempt to ruin someone's life. The kind of person who started out as a normal human being, just like me and you, but succumbed to the root of all evil, money. This is the story of Chip Whistler, otherwise known as the main antagonist of Big City Greens on Disney Channel. A show that people have been asking me to talk about for a while. One that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I just needed time for the perfect topic. Now that the series has shaken things up with the status quo altering half-hour special, Chipocalypse Now, I want to take a look at Chip's arc throughout the series thus far. His introduction, his spiral from a rival to full-on arch-enemy, his comeuppance, and what direction his character could be heading towards in the future. I want to talk about why the show nails Chip's character as the kind of capitalistic, arrogant villain that we see in the real world. Not only why he works as a villain, but why he's your new favorite Disney villain. Maybe he will be anyways, I don't know. So who's this Chip Whistler guy anyway? Okay, looking at him on the surface, he seems like the generic CEO villain. Someone who's all about the money. And I would actually argue there's more going on than that. In nearly every major appearance, we learn something new about Chip that helps unravel the many layers to him. Not only that, Chip is not necessarily driven by money, even if that is what ultimately corrupted him. He's driven by pride and approval. So much to the point that it's self-sabotaging behavior. Over the course of Big City Greens, Chip has ample opportunity to not only become Mr. Moneybags, but obtain everything he believes the Green family is preventing him from gaining. We currently have only so much of the shattered memories that piece together Chip's origin. From what we can gather, he actually seems to have contributed a good amount of effort for him and his father to launch Wholesome Foods. As a conversation with his father in the episode Reckoning Ball revealed, Chip was once a hard-working farmer, who from this photograph alone seemed humble and in love with his job, which is wild, because by his introduction into the series alone, you would assume he was an unfortunate product of nepotism. Seriously, his entrance immediately says it all. He snaps at Bill for attention. He assumes the Green family is putting on a humble but quirky farmer act in order to farm sympathy sales. Chip not only judges Bill when he realizes he's missing a finger, but he wipes down his hands immediately. He doesn't even give him a genuine handshake. This guy sucks. Chip's first order of business is, well, conducting business with the Green family, trying to get their crops sold in Wholesome Foods. And isn't that just lovely? He hates the poor, but wants to exploit small businesses, selling their produce at an insane markup. Obviously, the Greens would also benefit from this. They'd make some cash having their vegetables be in stores. But Chip is ensuring there's ultimately a profit for the company above anything else, which in itself is just business. It's just appalling because he treats them like garbage right off the bat. And this is where our lead character Cricket has to learn his first lesson about Chip. Cricket, wanting the best for his family, goes against his father's humble nature by faking crops. Something that we learn would very much be a Chip Whistler move, and is actually paralleled later on in the series. They were practically destined to become rivals. Similar approaches, different intents. Chip doesn't really cease his assumptions of Bill's character in this episode, referring to the customers as rubes, much like Cricket does earlier in this episode. Ultimately, Cricket realizes that unlike Chip, he has to be an honest man. He can't cheat the system. And while attempting to recover all of the fake produce, Cricket is too late to prevent Chip from biting into a fake apple, causing Chip to, well, chip his tooth, a lesson for his greed, and the catalyst for their rivalry. Chip's cracked teeth is important in more ways than one. As an entrepreneur, appearances are everything to him. We already saw the judgments he passed on the Green family at the start of this episode. He wants people to look at him and view the embodiment of success. But how's he gonna do that if his front tooth's all jacked up? Furthermore, this serves as a consequence for Chip, and this is something that makes his character interesting. Big City Greens is a show that values its continuity, even if it is episodic. There's a moving story in each and every Chip appearance, and surprise, surprise, they all end with damage to his teeth. This gag works not just because it's funny and satisfying, but it ensures that Chip always faces consequences. Yet he never calls it quits, he never backs off. Instead, as we'll discuss, he brainstorms and finds sneakier ways to carry out his misdeeds. Chip's next appearance, Feud Fight, explores his lack of self-awareness and makes you question why he views himself as the hero when he clearly is in the wrong. An average day at the farmer's market for the Green family spirals into a turf war between Cricket and Chip, as Chip sets up a wholesome foods booth. As Cricket puts it, the farmer's market is for the little guy. So why is a well-established, profitable company setting up shop? Well, for money, of course. And honestly, this episode's social commentary on capitalism gets a little too real. Chip utilizes his money and brand influence to draw attention away from the Green family, busting out partnerships and coupons, using his access to greater resources to outshine the competition. We see this happen all the time. Just look at independently owned online shops that have to compete with the likes of Amazon. It's harder and harder to escape the big name brands. And unless said brand does something to make an ass out of themselves, it is harder to convince consumers to support the little guy. Luckily for the Green family, Chip does make an ass out of himself. Cricket's attempts to sabotage Chip do not go unnoticed. But again, Chip lacks self-awareness. And we already established that he really values his reputation. Cricket is a child. Chip is a full-blown adult. Chip should not stoop to Cricket's level. But he does, despite Cricket's attempt at making amends. Chip assaulting Cricket with a barrage of tomatoes, which plenty of people see and capture on video. Yo! And his fixed tooth gets chipped once again, thanks to thoughtlessly consuming a very hot pepper. Coffee Quest marks the point where Chip resorts to unhinged, childish tactics in order to further wholesome food profits and exact revenge on Cricket at the same time. Cricket and Gloria face off against Chip when there's a shortage of coffee in Big City. Chip stooping to desperate measures in order to steal their bag of coffee beans. Now, Chip is more of a background presence in this episode as it focuses more on Gloria, yet everything ties back together in the end. An ending that starts to lean into a huge tactic of Chip's, manipulating emotions. Chip arguing to Gloria that city folks should stick together and strikes an offer for her to work at Wholesome Foods. This could be Gloria's chance at a higher paying job that could lead into a higher quality of living, which in return would impress her parents. But seeing as Gloria isn't from Big City, alongside growing fond of the Green family, decides to stay true to herself and delivers the finishing blow to Chip's tooth and ego. God, we should really do a Gloria video next. The show has recently made her a main addition to the cast, an upgrade from her recurring role. And I just love all of the insight and assumably real-life experiences that they are pouring into her character. I feel like we haven't had a character like this that gives insight into being an adult in their 20s since maybe Frankie Foster. If there's been any beforehand but I either just don't remember or haven't seen the show, please let me know in the comments. Now, remember when I said Chip is a character that repeatedly faces consequences but never really truly learns from them, never grows from them, and instead doubles down? Well, this is where the episode Reckoning Ball really spices things up. Chip assaulting Cricket with tomatoes went viral, ruining business at Wholesome Foods. And this is where we're properly introduced to Chip's father, the current CEO of Wholesome Foods. Chip's father is disappointed, not just because his son assaulted a child with tomatoes, but for what that incident means. Chip lost his way, and furthermore, money corrupts. This is where we learn that he used to be a humble farmer, much like the Green family. And what I said about Chip's lack of self-awareness really shines through in this moment. Because Chip is money motivated, you would assume the entire company would be, right? His dad wouldn't be any different, but he is. Mr. Whistler wants Wholesome Foods to aid the farmers market, not oppress them. And he wants his son to take over as CEO for Wholesome Foods, yet because of his behavior, instead he feels compelled to fire Chip. And of course the boy immediately breaks down and behaves like a child, crying and begging his father to avoid firing him, which to me shows how detached he's become from reality. I don't believe Chip was just disregarding his father's wishes the entire time. I do believe he wanted to impress his father, but do so by bringing in money. Yet it feels like he's become so disillusioned, so reliant on his wealth, that he felt his upper-class status put him above human decency, that people really wouldn't care about what he does because he's Chip Whistler. Of course his father wants to see the good in Chip, but instead of letting him off the hook, he makes Chip face the magic C word of his actions: consequences. Case in point, Chip has to earn his job back by having the Greens sign a forgiveness contract, something that is evidently really important to Mr. Whistler. And it not only shows just how different these two are, but it also shows that money won't corrupt you if your head is in the right place and if your motivations are well intended. I love that this single action alone distinguishes Chip's father from his son. Throughout this episode, Chip is reluctant to put in sincere effort into making amends with the Greens, and his struggle to perform farm work serves as another example of how Chip has lost his way. He went from a natural to passing out in the Greens' garden. We also see a more emotional side to Chip, as he openly expresses his conflicted views towards the Greens, and the importance of his father's approval. Chip shows vulnerability to the Green family. This episode is a big turning point for Chip. Unfortunately, for the worst. Chip's big speech to the Green family is all it takes for Cricket to sign the forgiveness contract. They just wanted honesty. And once Chip is officially CEO, his father heading towards retirement, he reveals his true colors. His conversation with the Greens was another manipulation tactic. And now that he's in charge, he ensures that he'll finally run them out of town. Now, despite this, I don't think everything Chip said was a load of baloney. I think to an extent, everything Chip said about his feelings towards the Green family was true. He was just leaving out some details, like how his disdain for them definitely outweighs any other conflicted feelings. Oh my god, he hates them. But also, I think everything he said about his father and how he longs for his father's approval, how much his father means to him, was the actual truth. But for reasons unknown, something about Chip is encouraging him to block out his conscience, to block out the good, honest farmer that his dad still sees in him. Evident by Chip hiding his father's framed photograph of Chip as a toddler. There's a part of Chip that recognizes what he's doing is wrong, but instead of correcting his behavior, he's just choosing to ignore any sign or reminder. Unfortunately for Chip, this self-sabotaging behavior leads to a bigger downward spiral. Remember Chip operating off assumptions and rolling with it? Well, that returns in the episode FriendCon. Despite no reason for conflict between the parties, and Chip only being wronged by Cricket in the past, we can infer that the whole forgiveness contract thing and doing labor for the Greens has caused Chip's resentments to be unfairly projected onto the entire family. Something that happens in real life far too often. When Cricket and Tilly want to find a new companion for Bill at a farmer's convention, Tilly decides this is the best chance to prove Chip's redemption, pairing the two up. In the, non-shipping way, please. Chip sees his dad and Bill, we just can't make that weird. Of course, Bill is just another pawn in Chip's game, as Whistler wants to sabotage Bill's big FarmCon speech. And he nearly achieves it, hindering Bill's ability to speak and going as far as to impersonate him. All of this blindsiding Bill in the process. He never did anything wrong, so why is he being punished? But of course, Chip is got by his own Achilles heel, leading to him being publicly humiliated, and Chip loses all but one tooth. Again, Chip thrives off of respect and is someone who greatly values appearances. So this last tooth is the last straw, and he finally puts his foot down in the episode Chipwrecked. Chip is up to some shit, man. He's got a whole ass grill, and his obsession with destroying the Greens has catapulted to the unhealthiest degree. He's neglecting his duties as CEO. We learn of multiple never-before-seen attempts to pull one over the Greens, all of which has left him defeated and in a declining physical and emotional state. Chip's latest scheme is competing with Cricket's indebted gig at Big Coffee, with a Wholesome Foods coffee truck of his own, blasting rounds of coffee into caffeine-craving customers. Try saying that 3 times fast. Caffeine-craving customers, caffeine-craving customers, caffeine-craving customers. I did it! But the police end up towing him for parking next to a fire hydrant. Wow, I guess the police do good sometimes. Here come the comments acting like most cartoons have ever treated cops with respect. Although Chip may have had an insincere apology to the Greens, his vulnerability in relation to his father was real, as he has a meaningful pep talk from his concerned father. A conversation that leaves out the details of him terrorizing a little kid. And I love that this conversation actually parallels Cricket's B-plot in this episode. And yes, the Greens actually are the B-plot in this episode. It is very much a Chip A-plot. But anyways, Cricket deceives his family into doing his his job for him, trying to make it seem like they're participating in a just cause, but they eventually catch on. Cricket learning that tricking your family only works for so long, so either enjoy it while it lasts, or just be honest to your family. A lesson Chip will have to learn the hard way, as his dad encourages him to act like a CEO, that Chip has the resources to succeed, but unfortunately, they have two very different definitions of what a CEO is. As this is where Chip truly acts like the kind of villain you see in real life. Finally growing a spine, he fires his assistants, asserts his place as CEO at Wholesome Foods, and the biggest flex of all, he buys Big Coffee, firing all of its staff, including Cricket and Gloria, in order to build a new Wholesome Foods. One that he implies may need a little expansion. A clear warning to the Green family. He's coming for their home. And this takes us to Chippocalypse now. And my oh my do I love this episode. Everything from before in Chip's arc is paid off here. All the details, all the foiled schemes, and more importantly, Chip's perception of the situation. It brings us to this very moment. Everything Chip thinks Cricket has wrought onto him, he wants to fire right back at him tenfold. As the family is in the midst of panic, they learn that Chip has not only bought Big Coffee, but the apartment complex right next to the Green household as well, forcing their neighbors out. And considering season 1 had an episode of Tilly bonding with a neighbor's cat, Anoush, ouch! I got upset seeing them leave. Remember how Chip thought Cricket was turning Big City against him in Feud Fight? You know how Chip actually embarrassed himself in FriendCon? Well, he wants to return the favor. Not only plotting to turn the Green household into a parking lot, but is granted authorization by manipulating the court of public opinion, fabricating a petition of fake signatures. Chip wants the Green family to feel as hated by everyone as he believes Cricket has made him feel hated by everyone. Chip wants to take everything from them, everything from Cricket, his job, his friends, and soon, his home. Thankfully, after some shenanigans and Nancy letting herself back in jail, but is freed shortly after thanks to weird reasoning from Officer Keys.
I don't want your family to leave. You're my favorite people to police.
They have evidence to present to the mayor that Chip's petition is indeed fake. All of the signatures stem from the same IP address, which not only was I happy to see this sleuthing in the show, but I'm glad to see it in a Disney cartoon. It's very easy to spread misinformation. And while this is more of an ungrounded situation, it's still important for these things to be consumed by an all-ages audience, so they're encouraged to not only give the benefit of the doubt, but just as important, it encourages them to do their own research. We have a big Act 3 showdown in the Green's front yard, which is fitting, given the events of Reckoning Ball, which is an interesting title in retrospect, considering here, Chip is moments away from demolishing the Green household. The showdown ends up being broadcast on local news, leading to the people of Big City to stand up for the Greens in person, affirming to the mayor that they do like the Greens. The court of public opinion back in the Greens' favor, although it never really left, and once again outcasting Chip, who is not having this. This man pulls up with the chopper, and once he realizes everything is imploding on him, Chip straight up tries to murder the Green family with the helicopter, his ego and impulses once again getting the better of him, as Cricket tricks Chip into his own defeat, once again damaging his teeth in the process. Chip gets literally sent flying, the Greens get to keep their home, the new Wholesome Foods is removed, and I'm curious to see what's gonna replace it because the credits have been teasing something. No Big Coffee or Wholesome Foods, it's a whole new ballpark. And now that Gloria has no job because of Cricket, again, she moves in by force. To little objection from the Greens, of course. And that's the story of Chip Whistler thus far. For a show like Big City Greens, I didn't expect to get this invested into the antagonist. But not only is he perfect for the show, again, he's the kind of villain you see in real life. Someone who's motivated by his own greed, his need to be loved by everyone. And again, because of his privilege, he doesn't really grow from his consequences. If he's loaded and holds this level of power, he probably feels like he doesn't need to change. That if he keeps throwing enough money and schemes at the wall, eventually he'll come out on top. But after Chippocalypse Now, obviously that's gonna be harder for him. So, what's next for Chip Whistler? Well, I believe he's going to face severe consequences unlike anything we've seen before. Not only do I believe he'll remain removed from CEO position of Wholesome Foods, but he'll be terminated from the company as a whole. Not only that, but he will certainly hear from his father, the person whose approval he relies on the most, despite their complex relationship. Not only do I believe Chip's father will obviously be disappointed in him, but he may go as far as cutting him off. wishing his son the best, but recognizing he's not the man he raised anymore. And when he does inevitably return for revenge, I think we can finally get to the root of his issue. Because at this point, the man's not gonna stop. He's like a roach, you can't get rid of him. But this is the kind of show that will ask the question, why? But in the more haha funny way, and not in the Steven Universe I'm gonna cry way. And simply, I believe Chip could either have abandonment issues, or experience severe social issues in a very formative time of his life. We don't know much about his mother beyond the fact that she's not in the picture. Something that Cricket sort of had to deal with, as Nancy was introduced as a character who was frequently in and out of prison. God, I should do a Nancy video too. But actually, you know what? I know something better than that. Because a lot of cartoon moms need respect on their name. I also do believe it's possible that Chip could have either been bullied or felt as if he has something or someone stolen from him. For example, maybe he fell in love with a girl, but she ended up choosing someone who's more like the person Chip is today, which is why he went down this path in the first place. Maybe he thought people don't want humble and honest. People want success, fame, money, and above all else, a high status in the social ladder. I don't know, exploring Chip's origins just feels like the next logical step for me, but it's not my show, it's not my story, so I'm sure whatever direction they go in, it will be great.
Local pariah Chip Whistler is presumed dead after the wreckage from his helicopter has been found.
Chip's dead. Chip's dead. Chip's dead. Nobody could have survived that crash.
Then I guess I'm a nobody. Oh, wait, that's not what I meant. I want revenge on them all! We're gonna destroy everyone in Big City. Chip Whistler is back, baby!
Oh, no, that's a bad lesson.
A few years back, I got really into Big City Greens. We were deep in lockdown, and I, like most people, was deep in depression. So I turned to the funny drawings that move so my brain would make the happy chemicals. While I was tuning into shows like Amphibia and The Owl House every Saturday, I also got acquainted with the Greens family, and it wasn't long before I got sucked into all the drama going on in this show. As although Big City Greens is a mostly episodic series, there's still a ton of continuity and status quo changes throughout it. Gloria went from a barista at Big Coffee to running her own cafe. The Greens went from living in the city to moving back to the country to now living at both places at the same time, going back and forth whenever they want. The greatest example of continuity in Big City Greens, though, has to be with its villain, Chip Whistler. A corrupt businessman whose entire career crumbles because bro cannot stop beefing with kids.
What? Yeah, that's right, baby! Chip!
Chip tried to ease the Greens into a corporate merger by selling their produce exclusively in wholesome foods. And when things didn't pan out, he made it his mission to put them out of business. A feud that kept escalating until this man was blowing up coffee shops, forging petitions, and nearly chopping up kids with his chopper. And then he died. Or so we thought. After being absent for an entire season, a move I really respect by the way, Chip is back. How did he cheat death? And what are his next moves now that the Greens are back in the big city? Since I covered Chip's arc back in 2021, today I want to catch up with Big City Greens and see what's in store for the corrupt CEO that we all love to hate. Let's talk about the return of Chip Whistler. After his ominous cameo at the end of Season 3, the show finally gives us the rundown of what Chip's been up to in the Season 4 episode Chipped Off, which is pretty much all exposition and laying the groundwork for his role moving forward. As it turns out, Chip used a parachute to evade the helicopter crash, only to discover that the world believes he's dead, as his body wasn't found at the scene of the crash. And his death is being celebrated by the masses. Nobody's mourning this bum! Come to think of it, his dad didn't even reach out to see if he's alive. Chip truly has no one, and the only person he has to blame for that is himself. And just to rub salt in the very open wound, the mayor makes it clear that even if Chip miraculously survived, he'd still be banned from the city. Rejected and jaded, Chip begins to spiral yet again. He masquerades as a ghost and breaks into the Greens' residence in an attempt to scare them off into the country, only for Gloria to break the news that they already moved of their own accord. Without a mega corporation to run and no family to harass, Chip has no purpose, no sense of direction, nothing to make him happy. He fantasizes about different career paths, yet none of them really sound all that appealing. But everything changes after Chip converses with a random citizen, wanting to understand how this man seems so well adjusted and unbothered all the time. To which the dude says, I don't know, I'm just a chill guy. He doesn't need high aspirations and a dream career to be happy, he just needs to be a normie. His words, not mine.
I'm gonna be a
Committed to reinventing himself, Chip creates the alter ego, Norm. Norm Al Guy. Very subtle. Wearing glasses and fake teeth, he blends in perfectly, picking up hobbies and a normal 9-to-5, alongside entering a brand new relationship with a woman he only refers to as Babe, while he thinks is a clever nickname, and not, you know, something a majority of people call their partners. I think this really goes to show that Chip isn't fully invested in his new life. I'm not convinced he even knows this lady's real name. He's not into any of this because completing these tasks and connecting with these people makes him happy. He's into it because the community who rejected him at large now adores him. Or at least, they adore Norm. But he won't be content with Norm hogging all the attention for long. Not when Chip still has a score to settle. A chip on his shoulder? It's been a long year, please let me have that one. The cracks begin to show as Chip starts to notice things about Norm's life. The barista's chummy with him, he's entrusted with more work, and his girlfriend can't get enough of his shitty jokes. As Norm, he thinks it's all a little condescending. Why'd you call me an extra cool guy, huh? You think I'm trying too hard or something? Extra work at the office, huh? The paychecks better be getting bigger. And as Chip, he just wants to know why everyone loves Norm so damn much. And why didn't they adore him like this when he wasn't living a lie? Well, I mean, he was kind of living a lie so people would stop boycotting him, but you know what I mean. Everyone loved Norm. Everyone but Chip. The breaking point arrives in the form of doppelgangers that I can only describe as we got the Green family at home. The Walmart versions of our second beloved yellow-toned family. Walmart Cricket, let's just call him Croquet, absolutely hates this man and is ready to pounce on him like a rabid dog. Although, to be fair, Chip was itching to relapse as soon as he saw an obnoxious little kid. Disturbed by this encounter, Chip is left seething and desperate for revenge. Although his beef is very clearly still with Cricket and not Dennis the Menace over here. His mini meltdown also causes Babe to realize that she might be dating a psychopath, but she's easily distracted.
I love dogs.
Chip has a full-on Green Goblin moment, confronted by his true self, who's been buried deep within him. He's fed up with having Chip work for Norm when Norm should be working for Chip instead. So moving forward, he'll continue to use the Norm persona as a cover as he lurks in the sewers as the revenge-driven Chip Whistler we've come to know. He also smashed his veneer out of his mouth as a way to embrace his true self, more or less being in his Joker era. But it's like, calm down, buddy. Don't you gotta put him back in when you're masquerading as Norm anyway? Also, he has a cool scar on his face after getting into a knife fight with Ratatouille over here. Chip also ropes his former employee, Wholesome Greg, into the mix, info dubbing this entire backstory to him. Reinvigorated, Chip begins to plot his revenge on the Green family now that they're back in the city. Okay, so like, I'm assuming this dude is still loaded and has access to all of his money, because aside from affording a new home and wardrobe, I gotta imagine that Greg is back on his payroll, just as a henchman, and not an employee of Wholesome Foods. Now, I'ma be real with y'all. I'm kinda mixed on this development. On one hand, I love that Chip is back in the picture. He's a super entertaining villain. On the other hand, I'm not super fond of how his return is executed. Part of why I like Chip is that he's a rich asshole, and that enabled the show to explore all the different ways in which communities can overpower corporate greed, even if it feels like a never-ending battle. It would have felt appropriate if Chip managed to reinsert himself into the spotlight with money, that he essentially buys back his image, bribing the city folk with gifts and false promises so that they'll love him again. That despite every horrible act he's committed, including trying to kill a child with a helicopter in public, Chip is still able to sway the masses back to his side. And I get wanting to keep things fresh. Have him as a villain without things going back to exactly how they were before. But that doesn't hit the same when we speedrun the entire Norm arc in 11 minutes. I wish they got a little Gravity Fallsy with it. Sprinkle Norm in the background of a few episodes, leading to an episode like this where we're following Norm's day-to-day activities from the get-go instead of a flashback. That we see Norm caught in a time loop of buying coffee, going to work, and eating dinner with his girlfriend. But each time it repeats, it gets a little more unsettling. And when the third loop comes, he finally snaps. And only then do we get confirmation that yes, this Norm character is indeed Chip Whistler trying to gaslight himself into being someone totally new. The audience would have already made the connection that this is Chip just by looking at him, but we wouldn't know what was going on with him for sure. So that Green Goblin scene wouldn't have just been funny, it would have been utterly insane. I also get the need of having the Norm persona since he's banned from the city, but if he's running around in the sewer and acting shady regardless, why even keep this bit around? If he was a teacher at Cricket's school, or if he was working somewhere that was in close proximity to the Greens, I'd get it. But for now, it just seems like something that may only work for this episode, as the audience is already in on the persona, and it wouldn't take long for the Greens to recognize him. Let me be clear, I don't think it's bad. I dig Chip's new look, and despite my nitpicks, I think the episode itself was great. I'm just mixed on this decision, and I want to see where it goes before submitting my feelings on it. So let's take a look at Chip's next appearance in the episode No Escape. The Greens decide to do some family bonding by going to an escape room, blissfully unaware that this activity is actually a trap orchestrated by Chip. How the hell did he plan this? Wait, is this storyline about people who can take advantage of blending in as a normal guy when they really have ulterior motives? Is Chip actually Joe Goldberg? First things first, I gotta say, a premise like this is why I love Big City Greens. Escape rooms didn't catch on until the late 2000s, early 2010s. My first experience with one being in the mid 2010s. So that being said, I didn't have any escape room episodes growing up the same way there were sleepover episodes, or episodes built around sneaking into movies, or different fads that were popular at the time. So it's always cool seeing more modern activities like this in Big City Greens, because it not only serves as a snapshot of the culture that kids can look back on in 5 to 10 years, feeling nostalgic for the good old days. But also, when you're a kid, what you're watching can inform you about what's out there in the world. You can be inspired to try something new just because it kinda looked fun in that cartoon you watched. Case in point, me and my friends love going to the Watai Temple in LA after seeing it in an episode of Amphibia. A Saturday morning there always rocks. So despite the high stakes in this episode, I do hope someone watches it and is inspired to try an escape room with their family or friends. They're really fun. Back to the episode, however. Long story short, Chip preys on the family's weaknesses so that they'll split up and find themselves stranded in different rooms, unable to escape. And once they're separated, Chip cranks the manipulation up to 11. Doing his best Jigsaw impression, he presents the Greens with an ultimatum. There's a big red button in each room that when pushed, will free whoever pressed it first, but everyone else will be trapped in their room forever. The family collectively refuses, believing that they are incapable of betraying each other. Only for Cricket to press the button? Oh, come on, man! Except that wasn't really Cricket, it was an actor? Yeah, that even got me.
Thank you for your services.
I hate non-union gigs.
Chip's game isn't over yet, however, as he presents the real Cricket with a chance to push the button. Although he neglects to tell Cricket that pressing the button will lead him directly to his death, as it'll release a flood of snakes to attack the lad. Dude, Chip, I think you either need therapy or to be euthanized. Your choice, bud. Thankfully, Cricket doesn't give in, and instead does his own thing. Scaling up the animatronic, Cricket is able to get into the ceiling and free his family from every room, uplifting them all with a personalized riddle in the process. Chip's plan is foiled yet again, and just like the good old days, he takes the L straight to the face, leaving him with a bigger tooth gap as a result. A bigger Chip! The ending kinda reaffirms to me that this arc would hit a lot harder if they build up to the reveal that Norm is Chip, instead of giving us the backstory from the get-go. Imagine if we didn't see Chip at all in this episode, and we haven't gotten the full story on Normal Guy. So when the Greens stumble upon the security room, the close-up of Chip's tooth chip would serve as confirmation that he's back in the game and up to no good. Again, it's not a big deal, especially for how silly the show generally is, and it's still very entertaining. I just wish they were a bit more grandiose with how this comeback is presented. That being said, we're only halfway through season 4, and one of the upcoming episodes is titled Chip's Revenge. So this little arc will wrap up in the coming months. I'm curious if it'll end up with Chip either regaining power, being defeated for good, or having a change of heart and actually redeeming himself in the eyes of the Green family, although people would probably hate the latter. None of those directions will surprise me though. Welcome back to Mini Mayhem! I'm Oshrik Vox, and now that Star vs. the Forces of Evil as we know it has come to a close, it's time we reflect, look back at all the plot threads to the series, and say to ourselves, wait, what the heck? Why didn't these things get answers? Like most stories, a lot of mysteries in Star went without an answer. They lack resolution. So just like my 20 unanswered Steven Universe questions after Change Your Mind, today we're going to go through 20 unanswered questions in Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Ready, set, go! Number 1. What is the new status quo after Earth and Muni cleave together? These two dimensions becoming one poses a lot of questions in itself. How are humans going to adjust to monsters? How are monsters going to adjust to essentially twice as many humans? Or Mumins? Will Star go back to school? Will Mumins get Earth jobs? Are monsters able to get jobs somewhere? What about Ponyhead or Tom? Are they going to go to school? Is school still even needed? How is the rest of the world dealing with change? Is Arizona now the underworld? Yeah. This was a pretty big narrative decision to make, and I'm not satisfied with the credits just rolling without an answer. And that branches into another question in itself. Number 2. How will things work for humans and other species now that magic is destroyed? Something else that we didn't get to explore too much, humans and monsters seem to heavily rely on magic. A lot of things in the world of Star was powered by magic. What is that like for them now? Can things truly carry on as normal? Or will they find themselves dealing with a great loss? Not exactly able to adjust. If we do get a one-off special or book or anything of the sort, this is absolutely a question we need solved. Speaking of dimensions being cleaved together, number 3. Are characters like Kelly and Jorby really separated from Star forever? Ponyhead's monologue prior to Star and Marco cleaving the two dimensions together featured Kelly and Jorby back in their own dimension, engaging in one of the best fights of their life. But how are things after that giant explosion that brought two dimensions together? Was it really just two dimensions, or was it more of every dimension, but we only focused on Earth and Muni? Did more portals pop up in other places, just waiting for someone to clash into them? Or will people like Kelly and Jorby truly be unable to ever see their friends again? Because if that's the case, that is pretty tragic, and again, it's something this show would have benefited from exploring for just even a few seconds. Alas, Disney can only give them so much time. But let's move on to number 4. Will there be a monarchy or democracy now that Earth and Muni are cleaved together? Earth clearly has a president, and as we know from the episode Starstruck, they handle things the way we do in real life, with good old democracy. At least in California where Echo Creek is located. But to contrast, Muni is ran by a monarch. They have kings and queens, like Moon or Eclipsa. With this new change in status quo, is there really a need for there to be a queen of Muni? Or will decisions only be made by a president? Now, Coronation did do a little bit of foreshadowing, as Eclipsa did suggest bringing democracy to Muni, only for its inhabitants to be greatly confused. And that's the thing. How are you going to introduce democracy to, for lack of a better word, peasants? Will it be an easy adjustment, and humans will get a hold on it as quickly as humans do? Or will this new environment rely on both democracy and a monarch? Eclipsa will still be in charge of the humans and monsters, while the President of the United States is accountable for humans. I'll let you guys chew on that while we move over to number 5. With no more magic, who still has powers and who doesn't? Something we saw after the destruction of magic was that although Ponyhead can still fly, her movement was no longer accompanied with sparkles. Instead, she just kind of floats and levitates. So while magic has somewhat affected her in a significant way, I imagine she can't produce any natural beams, or just about anything beyond her artificial horn. What does this mean for someone like Tom? Does he still have innate fire abilities? I like to imagine he does, but could he still open a gateway to the underworld? Or would he have to travel all the way there? The episode Satine Hotline confirmed that Tom's little firewall is indeed a form of magic transportation, as after Hegapoo shut down the portals, Tom was unable to traverse the underworld through that method. So what parts of him are considered magic, and what parts aren't? This of course goes for anyone we've seen use magic abilities throughout the series. Number 6. Marco's stab wound. During the final confrontation with the Dark Mill Horse, Marco gets completely impaled by the creature, revealing to have a wound of purple dark magic. Despite the focus on this wound, it never goes anywhere, and the womb is seemingly gone after the destruction of magic. Did this womb really perish with magic, or is there something deeper at play? Now yes, the Solarian wounds also fade away after the destruction of magic, but that's a fabricated form of magic against pure, raw, dark magic. There could potentially be a difference. Number 7. Where is Seth of Septarsis? Now, if you've been watching this channel throughout the 4th season of Star, you definitely know who Seth is by this point. He's a Septarian, like Toffee, who has a presence throughout the Book of Spells. It came across as if they're booting Seth up to be the final threat of the show. This was the real mastermind behind the murder of Moon's mother, Comet Butterfly. Seth wanted a genocide of all humans, and it appeared as if Toffee adopted his ideals from Seth. The fact that he never popped up in this 4th and final season was odd to say the least. So, where is he? Where are his whereabouts? He was last mentioned in Comet's chapter, his fate unknown. Maybe he was crystallized by Romulus. Maybe he's lurking in the shadows, planning his next move. Or maybe Septarians aren't immortal, and Seth passed of old age. I personally believe he's still out there, as Toffee was walking somewhere after he seemingly killed Star, and I'm hoping that future installments of the series deal with Seth directly. Although you also have to wonder, was he the Septarian king if Toffee was a prince? Talking about Seth is just frustrating and repetitive at this point, so let's move on. Although staying on a similar track, number 8. How will Septarians react to this new change between Earth and Muni? Assuming most Septarians are like Toffee and Seth, they're likely going to be just as disgusted by humans as they are with humans. However, unlike how humans stole Muni from monsters, Earth has always belonged to humans. Well, at least since the dinosaurs went bye-bye. Will the Septarians find a middle ground, or will they plan a genocide of all humans and humans? Shifting away from Septarians for a bit, let's move on to number 9, Marco's Monster Arm. The Monster Arm was one of the earliest threats in the series, and a lot of fans were always waiting for its return, as by the end of its titular episode, the Monster Arm swore that it would one day return. This return was foreshadowed multiple times throughout the series. Storm the Castle and Conquer come to mind. Yet despite these name drops, the Monster Arm never really went anywhere. It never came back, it never served any plot relevance, and now that magic is seemingly destroyed, it's as good as, well, gone for good. Now, I do actually want to tackle this in a theory, as I do believe there's a bit of mystique to investigate. But staying on Marco-centric questions, let's move to number 10. Why did the painting of Alphonse the Worthy tell Marco about the Blood Moon? A painting of Eclipse's father, Alphonse the Worthy, appeared in the episode Blood Moon Ball, seemingly speaking to Marco, telling him that the blood moon is tonight, the moon of lovers. Yet the reasoning behind this painting coming to life never really went anywhere, and the revelation that this painting was actually Eclipse's father seemed as if it would serve some sort of plot relevance, yet it didn't. It ended up being nothing more than a fun little Easter egg in the Book of Spells. Basically explain to the audience, this is who this guy is, he's not going to be relevant like you thought he was. Now, I did tackle my own thoughts on why Alphonse could have possibly wanted to set Marco and Star up before, so go check out that theory if you haven't. Number 11. Bringing it back to Toffee while staying on Marco, why did Toffee say Marco was a disappointment? After Marco was kidnapped by Toffee and stormed the castle, the two exchanged some back and forth banter, leading up to Toffee calling Marco a disappointment. Now, when Storm the Castle aired, everybody, including myself, looked way into this line, trying to figure out if Toffee had other plans for Marco, that there was an ulterior motive behind kidnapping him. Maybe that Marco could be destined for something more. But going to number 12, how exactly did Meteora regress into a baby? Now yes, baby Meteora was a really good outcome for Eclipsa. Instead of killing her daughter, she was able to give her a brand new life. But how and why? Black Velvet Inferno seems to be a very lethal spell. So why didn't Meteora just perish right then and there? I did speculate in a previous theory that perhaps the youth and souls that Meteora stole kicked in moments that should have been her death, activating an extra life of sorts, reducing Meteora into the body of a toddler. However, this is not confirmed, like, at all. So it's still kinda left up to our imagination. Of all the things I need answers, this could probably be the easiest one that Darren FC and the crew can explain. But speaking of Meteora, let's look at number 13. What is the fate of St. Olga's Reform School? This academy and its students last appeared in the episode Schooled, where it seemed as if the Reform School had a turnaround, going from a strict, oppressive school to a party campus that's a bit more organized with rules. However, what is it like now? Is Princess Arm still calling the shots? Does she still test on the pillars of brunch? I'm actually really curious about this environment. Will spoiled teenage brats like Brittany get sent there, now that Earth and Mooney are cleaved together? I know the episode Schooled provided some closure for this academy, but not enough for my liking. However, let's shift gears from Meteora to her father, with number 14. Why exactly did Globgor eat King Shastakan? Again, this is something I speculated on. Shastakan kidnapped Meteora, so Globgor ate him, and as a result, Globgor and Eclipsa were crystallized. However, this was another thing in this series that was set up to get a concrete answer, with Eclipsa remarking, "The truth is a bit complicated." Alas, that answer never came. Globgor was freed, and, well, that's it. Everyone loves him now. No more conflict. Yeah, as you guys can tell, I'm probably not content. But let's look at number 15. Who were the previous 26 Queens of Muni not included in the Book of Spells? The first entry of the book, Skywyn, remarks that she's the 27th queen, and that something happened to the previous Book of Spells. The only other names of the queens we do have is Sopina and Lyric Butterfly, who were never actually documented in the series or the book. Now we know the very first queen is likely called Mo due to Glosric's interaction with her in the episode Meteor's Lesson. But this still leaves 23 other queens. Who are they? What do their wands look like? What spells do they contribute to magic itself? There's still plenty of story to be told here, and I hope we get that story someday somehow. Maybe another Book of Spells, the original Book of Spells, or a re-release that's triple the size of the current book. I mean, I would be down for that. It'd be a lot of money, but I would be down. Number 16. What was the significance of Marco's dream and the tuxedo imagery? The episode Red Belt opens with an ominous fever dream that features the blood moon, a red belt, and Marco in a locker that's made to look like a casket, wearing a tuxedo that resembles the imagery of the end of Storm the Castle, again connecting Marco to Toffee, as if Marco would one day don Toffee's business suit. So, what's the deal? We got an answer on the blood moon, Marco got his red belt. Star being crazy, yeah, maybe that was just a feverish dream part, but Marco in this tuxedo feels very elaborate, again, for the aforementioned reason. Should the series continue in some way, shape, or form, are we going to see Marco pit against Star? Or is this just going to be a forgotten plot point that we're not supposed to look into at all? Number 17. What was the weird dentist tooth monster with a sock puppet in the first theme song? This is the only thing from the first theme song we never saw on the show. Everything else found its way in eventually, but this, man, I was excited for this in 2015. I was always waiting for this episode just because it seemed like a very interesting concept. Of course, as the show went on, it was obvious we were never actually going to visit this, and never ended up making an appearance in the series, but let's just imagine that episode. Maybe Darren FC can shed light on this possible scene someday, somehow. Moving on to number 18, wrapping up all the Toffee questions. Why does Toffee know so much about the Butterfly family and magic? Yeah, this is something about Toffee that we probably should have gotten an answer to, but even the Book of Spells gives us nothing. Bupkis, zip, nada. How did Toffee know that the Whispering spell was the very first spell Star learned? How did he know it would cause the destruction of the wand? How did Toffee know to corrupt the realm of magic? Why did he seemingly know about Eclipsa and the All-Seeing Eye? I speculated maybe Toffee dated Eclipsa, as it was revealed she dated Septarians in the Book of Spells, but again, that's not confirmed at all. Number 19. What is the significance of humans originating from humans? Did this contribute to Earth and Muni being cleaved? Is it just a neat fact we're supposed to ponder on? Or none of that? Again, this was another major reveal that just didn't go anywhere. And low episode count or not, they could have had some line at least mentioning it in the finale. Last but not least, number 20. What about the rest of the ships? Yes, this entire show is putting up to Starco, but what about everyone else? I mean, Jackie has Chloe, but is Tom gonna end up with Jana? I know this is silly, but I just get kind of giddy thinking about it. Star vs. the Forces of Evil is one of the only few shows where I'm actually invested in the shipping, oddly enough. Most of the time, it's cute, I don't really pay attention to shipping, but here, oh no, I'm all in. The Book of Bill has sowed a lot of seeds for the future of Gravity Falls, from an invasion of parallel pines to the resurrection of Bill's cipher, but it also does a lot to recontextualize the past. The book further fleshes out our core cast of characters and their origins. It felt like every few minutes I was reading another massive revelation that changes the way I look at Gravity Falls. The most shocking of these truth bombs revolving around Dipper and Mabel's parents, and the heavy implications that they might be getting a divorce, which is a twist that blows my mind, because not only does it explain so much about why Dipper and Mabel were shipped out to Gravity Falls for the summer, but it sheds new light on Mabel's state of mind when she got tricked by Bill, why she was acting so nonchalant inside the bubble, and why Dipper taking Ford's apprenticeship was such a big deal to both of them. Honestly, this is one piece of information that completely changes the way I look at Dipper and Mabel's arcs. Seriously, everything clicks into place. I've been itching to break this down, so enough beating around the bush, let's dive into it.
Like and subscribe!
Please? So the Book of Bill has a chapter all about dreams. Bill's a dream demon after all. It's sorta his specialty. He explains that he's one of the select few beings who has access to the mindscape, a realm that all consciousness is connected to. Every time we fall asleep, our minds open up a portal to this domain. This is what allowed Bill to understand mind back in Dreamscaperers, and how he initially introduced himself to Ford back in the day after being summoned. Although we know he can also enter your head if you make a deal with him. Bill gives us a peek into the dreams of our main squad, the characters represented in the Zodiac. Some of these dreams skew more to the comedic side of things, like how Seuss wants to change his last name to Pines, which Melody will have a problem with, or how Ford is pansexual, or how Gideon actually loved the sailor suit that Bill put him in during Weirdmageddon. Blubs only dreams about Derlin and vice versa, which is really cute. But then a lot of these dreams are just dark or sad, providing insight into these characters in a way that makes us really feel for them. Wendy almost exclusively dreams about her late mother, implying that her death really had an impact on Wendy, and that she died when Wendy was old enough to remember her. They were probably close, and Wendy just bottles all of that up. God, she has the potential to be one of the most interesting characters in the franchise. More Wendy development is a great argument for more Gravity Falls if you ask me. Pacifica has nightmares about trying to wash blood off her hands, but it never comes out, and she accidentally crushes the town because she's 100 feet tall. Both dreams, I believe, are a reflection of the guilt she associates with being a Northwest, after realizing just how self-centered and cruel her family truly is. Her family legacy was built off screwing over the less fortunate, generational sins that she feels like she can't atone for, hence the blood that can't be washed off. Wanting to be better than her parents, she's becoming conscious of the fact that her name has power and influence, and she wants to use it for the greater good, that power being why she's 100 feet tall. But she's afraid of turning out like any other Northwest, leaving other people to suffer for her own benefit, hence crushing the town. Poor girl has a lot on her mind, and apparently in her dreams, Archibald Corduroy, the lumberjack ghost, still communicates with her. He seemed to gain respect for Pacifica, but maybe he still shows up as a way to hold her accountable, applying pressure for her to do better. Or maybe he's just venting about hell. Stan has nightmares about being in high school and his brother being trapped in a science fair experiment, eluding the Ford science fair project that would have been revolutionary, but Stanley, being reckless and angry, destroyed the experiment by mistake. It makes perfect sense that he's still dreaming about this after like 40 or 50 years, because destroying Ford's experiment was the catalyst to everything changing. The two bros falling out for years, Stan getting kicked out the house, Ford going to backups more and meeting Fiddleford. That science fair project is responsible for this entire series happening, and Stan still regrets messing it up all these years later. Mabel's dreams tend to generally impress Bill, as he boasts that she has some of the greatest dreams in the whole mindscape, but she has reoccurring nightmares where she fails to save a dying pig, Waddles. She's extremely paranoid about Waddles kicking the bucket, because not only did she nearly lose him when they first met in the Time Traveler's Pig, but she has trauma from him getting abducted by a dinosaur in the Land Before Swine. Honestly, I really feel for Mabel, because I'm constantly paranoid about my cat Milkshakes, since I was forced to give up my childhood cat eons ago when I moved for the first time. I wasn't even in middle school back then, and it still affects me now in my 20s. I totally buy that Mabel would be messed up over everything her and Waddles had been through over the summer. But then there's Dipper's dream, the big one.
Recurring nightmares while overhearing a fight between his parents he wasn't supposed to hear. Why do you think they're in such a rush to get the kids out the door for the summer?
God damn. Dipper said while narrating in the first episode that his parents sent him and Mabel out to Gravity Falls for the summer so that they wouldn't be inside brain rotting all day, and instead get some fresh air, make some new friends. But in actuality, it sounds like their parents sent them off for 3 months because they were in the process of separating. They were getting a divorce and needed some time to figure out their arrangements. Who keeps the house? Who has custody of the kids? What are weekends gonna look like? Etc. It was just better the kids were away from home so that they wouldn't be caught in the middle of any tension. They wouldn't have to overhear any more arguments. This one piece of information completely changes my perception of Dipper and Mabel. This truly recontextualizes their arcs from start to finish. Why did Dipper become so obsessed with the mysteries of the town? Why did Mabel become so laser focused on getting a boyfriend? It's not just because they're kids, it's because they're desperately trying to distract themselves from the anxiety of their parents splitting up. The dread of not knowing what their lives are going to look like after they go back home. Knowing that holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas won't ever be the same, yet not knowing how it'll be different. Are they going to have to move to a new house? If so, are they going to have to go to a new school district and basically start their lives over? All of this is a lot for any kid to have to think about, and as a child of divorce, it really ain't easy. So it makes sense that they would both resort to escapism. Dipper trying to unravel a 30-year-long mystery, and Mabel settling for trivial relationships that feel like a big deal when you're young, but don't really matter in the long run. Mabel's coping mechanism is definitely a bit more realistic, but Dipper's can easily be equated to someone just hyperfixating on media in the real world. This is how I look making cartoon theories. But not only does this rationalize a lot of their behavior in an average episode of the series, but it really gives us a whole new perspective on where their heads were at during the end of the series. Dipper was so enticed by Ford's offer to stay in Gravity Falls as his apprentice because that meant he wouldn't have to go back home to a broken family. Not that the Stan Bros were any better at that point, but at least there were cool monsters to fight. Mabel was crushed by the mere idea of Dipper staying behind in Gravity Falls because that would have meant that she had to face the new status quo at home alone. Which, yeah, your twin, your absolute best friend abandoning you during a significant time in both of your lives isn't gonna feel great no matter how you spin it. Mabel was always going to get the short end of the stick in that deal. Speaking of deals, yes, Dipper and Mabel's parents getting a divorce would explain why Mabel was emotionally vulnerable enough to get tricked by Bill, handing over the rift to who she thought was Blendin Blandin. The Book of Bill actually leans into this, as we learn that Cypher tried to make a deal with Mabel before Weirdmageddon. He loved Mabel's style and found her to be a perfect pawn. So what went wrong for him? Well, her mind has wanted posters of Bill everywhere, and her Hall of Secret Fantasies is protected by Xyler and Kraz. Bill infiltrates the facility under the guise of Chill Cypher, but ultimately, Mabel's big secret fantasy was just a CD of Fantasy by Mariah Carey, so Bill demands to learn what makes Mabel sad, a weakness that he can exploit, to which Xyler and Kraz state, "Summer's ending, my guy. Ending to death, bro. She'd do anything to make it last just a day longer. Probably something rash and out of character even." Gotta love Hirsch taking the piss out of any Mabel haters out there. Don't shoot the messenger. But yes, Mabel was desperate enough to find any way to make summer last for as long as possible, because she didn't want to face a world where her parents were divorced. Bill, only working with some of the details, capitalized on this and possessed Blendin Blandin, the one person who could offer her more time. And we all know how that turned out. This also explains why Mabel had an odd ignorance is bliss vibe in Mabelland. Although I think Bill was influencing her with his dark magic, this was all the escapism she could ever hope for. She was in a world where her parents never get divorced, and she didn't want to give it up. She didn't want to see it for what it really was. This really increases the impact of Weirdmageddon 2, Escape from Mabelland's ending in particular, as the two vow to stick together and face the future no matter what happens. Knowing that they're not just talking about Bill or turning 13, but dealing with some really hard changes in their immediate family. Again, it changes their whole arc. I could go on about it all day, but I think I'll pipe down and save it for any character videos I may do in the future, like the Steven Universe ones I started making, which you should check out if you haven't. I think this also explains why Stan was so adamant about Watto's going home with the twins. They're already going through a lot. They don't need another thing to be upset about. And if you're already going through some drastic changes, what does throwing a pig into the mix really do beyond some much needed emotional support? So there you have it, the twist that changes Gravity Falls as we know it. One that adds a lot of relatability to viewers out there. I don't think it was planned during the original series, but it's a very welcomed addition. Now yes, for all we know, Dipper and Mabel's parents could have worked things out while the kids were gone, and I'd love that outcome. But I don't think that really changes the state of limbo Dipper and Mabel were existing in for 3 months while they were far from home. It's the uncertainty of the future that matters more to this story than whatever the future actually ends up being. But as always, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours. How do you feel about this development? What else do you think this drastically changes in the show? Let us know in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going over on Twitter and Instagram at Thoughts and at Roundtable Vids. Who is the biological father of Phineas Flynn and the biological mother of Ferb Fletcher? Let's just dive right in. Animation mysteries. Useless answers that we need, we crave. Questions that are fun to speculate on because they help us escape from all the horrible things going on in this world. And do we need some escapism in good old 2020? So when Nintendo, Tunerific Tyreek, and the Wacky Deli hit me up to collab through a month of special Phineas and Ferb content on each of our channels, one video every weekend. Hey, post-production Kevin here. Obviously, this video did not go up on the weekend, and for the next video in this collab to be uploaded on a special date, maybe just expect these in the beginning of the week. And oh, if you're wondering what this collab is called, how do you feel about ACA? Analysis without a cool acronym. I knew whatever I made, it had to be something big. And in case you didn't figure it out, we're doing this because of the movie. Comes out August 28th on Disney+. You should check it out. Not sponsored though. Come on, Disney. Originally, I was going to tackle what a Phineas and Ferb revival sequel series could look like. And while I still want to do that video, it would have required way too much art to get it out on time. But figuring out who the parents are of the main 2 characters, that was something that I've already pondered about time and time again. You see, Phineas and Ferb is kind of a lot like Drake and Josh. Definitely not in execution, but the 2 shows do share that big mystery. We have 2 titular stepbrothers, the one whose mother remarried also having a sister. Yo, wait, what's going on here, Dan and Swampy? And despite remarriage indicating that there's still 2 biological parents out there, neither shows make an effort to ever explore who those parents could be. And I kinda get it. They don't want to detract from the message that not every family looks the same. That a family full of step-siblings is just as important as your typical nuclear family. But come on! Look at Phineas and Ferb. An entire summer, 104 days, over 104 episodes. And you couldn't throw us a bone? Now, of course, there are plenty of people out there who believe that Heinz Doofenshmirtz is the father of Phineas Flynn. And Candace, I guess. This is because we know that Linda Flynn Fletcher went out on one date with Heinz back in the day. However, considering they would have had to bump uglies twice to make both Candace and Phineas, alongside a lot of other discrepancies, like Phineas's age, yeah, that idea doesn't really add up. Not to mention, although Doofenshmirtz has a triangle-shaped head, it's not the same triangle shape as Phineas's head. One side of Doofenshmirtz's triangle head serves as his chin. Phineas has no chin. What do you gotta say to that, flat earthers? But that's not to say that Phineas's actual father couldn't have any similarity to Doofenshmirtz. We can see that Candace adopted most of Linda's features, especially when she grows older. But I don't believe Linda's DNA was responsible for Phineas's head. So I actually imagine Phineas's father did have his triangle-shaped head. However, unlike Doofenshmirtz, in terms of design, the bottom side was not used for his chin. I actually imagine Phineas's father having the same exact head shape as Phineas, except, and please stay with me, he either has a beard or a square chin. If not, both. Could you imagine Phineas's father with a goofy chin and like a little soul patch? I think, like Linda, he's also a redhead and he also sports blue eyes. Although I really couldn't imagine his hair being anything like Phineas's. That hairdo is one of a kind, so maybe he just has a buzz cut. But that is not the meat of figuring out who is the father of Phineas Flynn. No. What about the occupation and personality, baby? I think occupation is important because Phineas and Ferb are like genius kid inventors. Yet none of their parents really seem like they were into construction all that much. Now, obviously, Linda used to have a career as Lindana, which explains Phineas and Vanessa's musical inclination. Gotta love that canon explanation for all the singing. So I assume Phineas's interest in building things actually stemmed from his father. And considering how innovative Phineas is, I don't believe this guy was just a construction worker either. No. Hear me out. Considering all the blueprints, schematics, and pretty straightforward vision, I mean, God, Phineas can figure out a day's activity just like that. I believe that Phineas's father could have been an architect, leaving an imprint on Phineas when he was young and planting the seeds for the prodigy we see today. In terms of personality, I can see Phineas's dad having, anger issues. Why do I say that? Well, Linda's pretty sassy, always roasting Candace.
Every day I come home to find nothing there. Doesn't it exhaust you? Oh, look, there's nothing here.
I guess the proper word you could use is, blunt, while Candace is very abrasive, impulsive, and yeah, easily angered. As for Phineas, although we know he's typically nice, remember early on in the series, and even in early drafts for the series? I'm sorry, Phineas, but...
You want to go swimming? Kind of in the middle of something here. Oh, right.
But it's okay, we all grow out of it. I assume they made Phineas a lot nicer, saving moments of anger for very rare occasions.
Get on the trike!
Because they realized, damn, if Ferb's the silent type and Phineas is just mean, we're not really gonna have a positive, optimistic, happy-go-lucky character. No one for the other pessimistic characters to bounce off of. I mean, he only gets so far with Isabella and Phineas is pretty much shutting her down every second. So I believe it was a necessary change. But all that said, I can see Phineas's dad having his own anger issues. And ultimately, he ended up bickering with Linda way too much, and the fighting resulted in Linda leaving him. Or maybe he split from the family. Either way, you get the idea. As for Ferb's mom, well, we know Ferb is reserved and kind of an oddball in his own unique way. Meanwhile, his father, Lawrence, he has an assortment of hobbies, but the dude's not really strange or weird. He's kind of just chilling all the time. Also, the green hair. Where did that come from? This had me thinking that Ferb's mom was the oddball. In terms of appearance, well, Ferb has his father's head shape, so really how she looks can be open to interpretation. I just imagine green hair and pretty much a unique everything. Unique earrings, a unique sense of fashion. Pretty much anything about her that can stand out will stand out. And in terms of how she rubbed off on Ferb, I believe her occupation and personality kind of go hand in hand. I believe Ferb's habit of being a man of few words, but chock full of wisdom with his insightful quotes and analogies, and all of his Ferbisms, could have been a result of his mother's personality. I believe Ferb's mother could have been that of a free spirit, kind of the rebellious type, and a jack of all trades, explaining why the hell Ferb is so talented. However, she couldn't be tied down to, well, anything. Not a job, not a home, and maybe not even a family. Wanting to do the right thing, but always feeling as if her heart belongs somewhere. And maybe that's how Lawrence initially ended up as a single father. Ferb's mother leaving them to travel the world. I mentioned some of these qualities because of Ferb's attraction to Vanessa. Like many people when choosing a partner, maybe Ferb subconsciously saw traits of his mother within Vanessa. Not physical traits, that would be insanely weird, but just a sense of familiarity. He recognized something, but he couldn't even really tell why. At first he just saw a pretty girl, but these two actually end up together, oddly enough. So they must have hit it off somewhere on a deeper level. Or maybe Ferb's mom just dropped dead at some point, I don't know. But as always, these are just my speculations, and I want to hear yours. What do you think? Who do you imagine Phineas's dad and Ferb's mom to be? Does it really matter? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at Fox. We're also on Instagram. Welcome back to Meanie Mayhem on the Roundtable. I'm Fox, and guys, Star may be on a little break, but content on this channel is not slowing down. Over the break, we'll also have a bunch of theories, discussions, and of course, breakdowns. But how are we doing breakdowns? Well, coming July 17th, The Magic Book of Spells is being released as a full-length book in stores. Every single page from the show and a lot more. Think of it like journal number 3 from Gravity Falls, except we're not waiting till the end of the series to get the book. Now, this book was to hold information in chapters written by all 13 Queens of Muni, but Darren FC gave fans a little treat. After the season 3 finale aired on television, she tweeted out coordinates, leading to individual comic book shops, where the first lucky person to show up got a signed poster and a deck of trading cards. These cards were nothing to sneeze at either, as the deck was of all 13 Queens of Muni. Yes, we got them revealed early. 1, because Darren FC is awesome, and 2, she probably wanted to minimize the risk of it being spoiled in the book, should anyone get an early copy and post spoilers online, that if anyone was going to spoil them, it would be her. So this was a win-win situation. Now the Reddit user Maps11 actually posted high quality screenshots of all the cards. So let's run through them, break it all down, and be a little enlightened in human history. You guys ready? Let's dive in. Kicking it all off, we have our protagonist, the beloved Star Butterfly. But here her official title is Star the Underestimated. Guys, that's Star's official title. We have Moon the Undaunted, Eclipse of the Queen of Darkness, and now Star the Underestimated. And personally, I think this title fits her very well. Star and underestimation goes hand in hand, not just by her mother, but by basically everybody. Star's entire character is pushing past the limits and blowing everyone's expectations out of the water. For example, in the episode Toffee, Glossric believed him and Star was stuck in this weird realm forever, that there was nothing more they could do than sit tight, and I guess eat the stew he was going to make. But Star said to hell with that. And despite Glossric underestimating her, she pushed past her limits and created new magic, restoring the realm of magic and creating a brand spanking new wand. Hell, even in Conquer, Star was underestimating her ability to be queen. Tom underestimated her as well, believing she would not be able to defeat Meteora, so they should just hide in the underworld. The only person who doesn't underestimate Star is Marco, having faith in her from the very beginning. Now Star's a Rolly sign, which I'm assuming is like a zodiac sign, but for Muni, is a pig goat. Her cheek mark, as we all know, is a heart, and her official canonical height is 5'2", which I think would put Marco around 5'4", 5'5". Marco's short, because he's not that much taller than Star. Now beyond all these attributes, what I find amusing is that Star's charisma is the highest one. Star's charisma is very important to her actions and the people she influences. So while her wisdom's at an 11, her charisma is what will come into play as she becomes a great queen. Moving on from Star is Skywyn, or Skyween, the Queen of Hours. As we can see with the illustration attached to her card, she is utilizing the Warnicore Stampede spell. Now this could insinuate she's the one who invented this spell, or it was simply her signature move. We'll get confirmation of this in the spellbook, whether or not the Warnicore Stampede appears in her chapter. Now it's fitting they do show the Warnicore Stampede as we associate that spell with Star, and Skywyn definitely looks a lot like Star. Out of all the queens, she has the closest resemblance to her. The blonde hair, the cheeks, the eyes, although I'm definitely noticing a gold motif, which is weird because this differs from her design in Star Marco's Guide to Mastering Every Dimension, where she was more of a redhead. But while we're here, her brief mention in the book explains that she added a lot of great spells, most involving time and movement. Her Rolly sign is a silkworm, her height is 5 feet, and her cheek mark symbol is an hourglass. Looking at her attributes, she's very smart, very constitutional, and very wise, wisdom being her strongest attribute. However, her charisma is only a 7, which tells me she may have been the awkward type. Next up is our homegirl, Eclipsa, the Queen of Darkness. And I wonder if Muni themselves had any influence on making these cards, because her Aeroli sign is a demon. We see her monster love Globgore by her side in this illustration. Her height is 5'2", so she's the exact same height as Star. Her cheek mark, of course, is spades, and her attribute showed she has more raw strength than Star, the same level of charisma, definitely more wise, and possesses more intelligence than Star. Having the same level of charisma is definitely a key detail, as it shows why they bounce off each other so well, and they behave in a similar fashion. Also, if you look at the little butterflies at the top of each card, Eclipsa is a 5-pointer, which appears to be the maximum, ranking her as a strong and valiant queen. Next up, who made her debut in Into the Wand via Tapestry, is Star's great-great-grandmother Shy. Selena the Shy. We still don't know too much about her, besides the fact she held a lot of cosmic secrets. Her Airoli sign is Ponyhead. Her height is exactly 5 feet. She's a shorty. Her cheek mark is a crescent moon, and she has slightly different stats. She isn't very strong or constitutional, but is fairly wise, excels at potion crafting, and excels at shyness. And this might sound weird, but these attributes really give me the vibe of a geeky kind of science girl who spends all her time researching, experimenting, doesn't really get out much, and to a lesser extent, she reminds me of Velma from Scooby-Doo. Again, I don't know why, she just does. But yeah, very, very interesting. Moving on though, Justin, the boy queen. Boy, what? Now, immediately what caught my attention, besides the fact this is a male queen, is that his butterfly ranking is 1. This dude is getting no love because he's a male. Maybe, probably. It adds up. Now, he has a pet dino along his side. His height clocks in at 6 feet, so he's definitely tall among the other queens. And his Airoli sign is Bog Slug. He's fairly strong, not that constitutional, not that wise, doesn't have that much charisma, but evidently excels at math. Now, a boy queen. How is this possible? What purpose does Justin serve? Well, I think this may have been mentioned in Star Markle's Guide to Mastering Every Dimension, but Channel Federator recently cited in their recent 107 Facts video about Star is simply the result of when a queen has a male child. That male becomes heir to the throne, but he doesn't become king, he becomes queen, which is sort of weird, but it makes sense. I'm assuming that means whoever he wed was king regardless of gender. If he married a boy, then that boy would be king. If he married a girl, then that girl will be king. As for how would he have kids if he married a boy? We see the higher-ups of Muni clearly isn't above adoption. No tea, no shade. Now, what I find interesting is that we actually don't see Justin's wand. Or do we? Now, I'm making a wild guess here, but at the corner of his illustration, we see a heart with feathers. Above that heart with feathers is his little dino friend. It almost looks attached. What if that little dino friend is the wand? It's definitely different and definitely makes an impression, but we won't have confirmation until, again, the spellbook comes out in July. Moving on, another brand spanking new queen is Estrella the Drafted. Her Airoli sign is Blowhole. Her cheek mark appears to be a flower, or at least a flower type shape, and her height is 5'5", so she's not as tall as Justin, but one of the taller queens in general. Now, fittingly enough, Estrella uses her wand as a pen, which we saw Star do at the end of Raid the Cave. But whereas Star's is more of an attachment, it looks like Estrella's wand was a pen at all times. And evidently, she wrote a lot. Now, call me crazy, but the fact she's called Estrella the Drafted and we see her writing in a notebook, Estrella could have very well been the very first queen of Muni. That what she's writing right here could have became the spellbook, or she just liked to write a lot and that led to her making a lot of spells, either or. Now, when it comes to attributes, her intelligence and wisdom is on par with each other, both clocking in at 16. And she had decent charisma too. You go, girl. Overall, out of all the queens, she captivates me the most. I want to hear her story. What also contributes to the idea of her being the very first queen is that look at the background. There's no buildings, no castles, it's just land. Alright, moving on from Estrella, someone we know was dear to Moon and introduced in the episode Moon the Undaunted is her late mother, Comet the Chef. And as we see from her illustration, Moon is chowing down on a cupcake. So Comet clearly liked to cook. That makes me wonder, was her wand a spatula? Because we don't see her wand here. It does give me the idea that her wand took the form of some kind of kitchen utensil. Her Airoli sign is Narwhal, which Narwhal Blast. Her height is exactly 5 feet, and her cheek mark is a butterfly. And looking at her attributes, she was not a queen to mess with. She was as strong as Star, which Star is pretty strong. Her dexterity wasn't too far off. She was very smart, very constitutional, very wise, and had high charisma. So the fact Toffee managed to kill her shows that Toffee himself was in a league of his own. Comet was clearly one of the more impressive queens of Muni. Despite her love for cooking, we can tell she had the skill set to uphold all her duties as queen. And I really hope we get the story of how Toffee killed her, what he used. Moving on from Comet, we have Crescenta the Eager, another strong queen working in at 5 butterflies. Her wand actually isn't too off from Star's, having a giant heart instead of a giant star. Her Airoli sign is Hydea, which I believe is just a Hydra. Her height is 5'2", and her cheek mark is a bunny wabbit. Again, you can tell she was definitely one of the stronger queen just looking by her attributes. Pretty good strength, high dexterity, intelligence, was very constitutional, although she was alright in the wisdom category, and had low charisma. And again, the low charisma, but yet her title was Crescenta the Eager, paints a picture of a really awkward teenager to me, so hopefully the Book of Spells will have quite amusing stories about her. Next up, our queen, our liege, Moon the Undaunted. Her rolling sign is a dead horse, her cheek mark's a diamond, and her height is 5'7", so Moon is one of the taller queens. She's stronger than Star, has common sense, is very smart, very wise, is very charismatic, and fairly constitutional. Also like the illustration of Moon in her younger days blasting off Toffee's finger. That was clearly a very proud moment for her, being represented not only in the tapestry, but on this trading card. Now, moving on from Moon is a queen that probably didn't do so well, the Hernia the Heaped, only having one butterfly attribute, so besides Justin, she's the only one. Her early sign was a Warnicorn, her cheek mark is just a dot, her height is 4'2", so she was a shorty, like shorter than most. Her strength, not available, dexterity, not available, intelligence, not available, constitution, not available. How did she become queen? Next up, Meteor's replacement is Festivia the Fun. Her early sign is a pixie, her height is 6'1", so dang, she was taller than Justin. And her cheek mark is sort of a diamond, but more of a star, the ones that filled Star and Moon's eyes when they're in the butterfly forms. She was fairly strong, fairly intelligent, high in dexterity, a bit lower in the constitutional part, not that wise, but very charismatic, which makes sense as according to Star Markle's guidebook, she was more or less a distraction. She was a party kind of girl, and this all makes a lot more sense now, as since she was Meteor's replacement, no one would suspect her heritage or rifle passage as queen if they were too busy partying it up with her. Whoop whoop. Next up, my favorite queen, Solaria the Monster Carver. Rigging in at 5 butterflies, her rolly sign is Lion Dragon. Lion Dragon, that's badass. Her height is 6'3", so she was an Amazonian, and her cheek mark is a lightning bolt. Her strength is 20. One of her attributes is cold determination at 18. She's fairly intelligent, fairly constitutional, fairly wise, and it's like a lightsaber sword. It's, oh my god. I can just fangirl over Solaria all day. Like, I really need a flashback with her. I need an entire episode just from her perspective, which I think we're gonna get in season 4 with, you know, Globgore about to be released. Things are gonna get messy. Guys, I just really love Solaria, okay? Always have, always will be. She's beautiful, she's fierce, she's badass. Like, if they ever made a Star vs. the Forces of Evil game, I would pray she's an unlockable character because I would main her. And finally, clocking in at 5 butterflies is Rhina the Riddle. Her rolly sign is Tadpole, her height is 5'5", and her cheek mark symbol is the infinity sign. And we see that she's holding some kind of Rubik's Cube in the center, and she's amazed by it. There's this entity, this power, this magic source that just captures her eye. And I believe she's the only queen with glasses. Dorky glasses as well. No. I take back what I said about Selena the Shy being Velma. This is Velma. Or Android 21. Or any other attractive, nerdy character. If Estrella wasn't the first queen, I think Rhina might have been. At the very least, she's definitely one of the more powerful ones. Her actual strength is pretty average, coming in at 14. Her wrist power is 20, which, what the hell does that mean? She's fairly intelligent and wise. She's constitutional, doesn't have that much charisma, but actually, now that I think about it, looking at that cube, that glow in the center almost makes out a butterfly shape, almost. So under the idea that Rhina was the very first queen, what if this cube was the very first wand, or would become the very first wand? That's actually insane to think about, but what else could it be? It appears as if it's floating, as she's holding it without actually touching it. Her cheek marks being the infinite symbol, infinite magic. I don't know. I just feel like this queen in general is an important one. She definitely has some kind of strong bond with magic. And if this illustration isn't the origin of the wand, it has to be the origin of something great with magic in the world of the show. And I can't wait for them to reveal exactly what that is. But guys, that brings us to an end. That was all the 13 queens of Muni. We have a boy queen, we have a deadbeat, we have the possible origin of the magic wand and the magic spellbook, and I can't wait to get more information on all of these queens when the Star spellbook comes out in July. But what do you guys think? think? Who's your favorite queen? Again, mine is Solaria, hands down. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet them directly to me at @Vox, or at the Roundtable on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Roundtable Vids. Leave your own theories about them. If you want to help us grow, join the Roundtable, become a member on Patreon. You get access to a lot of perks and have your name featured at the end of the video like all these beautiful, wonderful people. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications, stay in the loop of all things Star. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Vox out. Not too long ago, I made a video on this chilling illustration from the Book of Bill. One that presents an army of parallel pines plotting their revenge on the Dipper and Mabel we've come to know and love. Bill's cipher reveals that there's only one timeline where Dipper and Mabel survived the events of the summer. In all the other timelines, they either ended up 6 feet under or became the worst versions of themselves. In that original video, I mainly focused on the idea of all these variants coming together and fighting to the death to decide who gets to take Prime Dipper and Mabel's place in the multiverse. But now that a high quality version of this spread is out there, and the fan base has had time to speculate, I want to dive deep into every single one of these variants, running through every timeline where Dipper and Mabel died. Or at least lost to the villain of the week. How did Bill end up striking a deal with Mabel? Why did Dipper join the Society of the Blind Eye? What about the universes that aren't depicted here? I'm going to give you all the answers you've been looking for, so let's get started. Let's take it from the top and start with Gnome Queen Mabel. A timeline where Dipper and Mabel didn't even make it past their first big adventure without things going south. I imagine that the major change in this universe was Mabel complying with the gnomes and becoming their queen. We can even kind of see one of them lifting her up here. While this already isn't an ideal situation for Mabel, I think things took a darker turn from here. Dipper obviously wouldn't be cool with Mabel getting abducted and forced into becoming royalty. He tried to save her and failed spectacularly. Keep in mind, Mabel giving in probably means she never discovered that they're vulnerable to leaf blowers, and the twins would be unaware that the gnomes could be tamed by a dog whistle. So Dipper has no surefire way of defeating them. Even if he pulled up with the whole Mystery Shack crew, they'd be vastly outnumbered. They'd get crushed, literally. Dipper would have been killed by the gnomes, and any surviving members of his rescue party would become their human slaves, separated from the town as they're hidden deep in the woods. Bitter, heartbroken, and desperate to escape gnome kind, Gnome Queen Mabel has a far-fetched wish to seek out another universe where she and her brother could have defeated the gnomes and enjoy a peaceful summer. Little does she know that summer would have been anything but peaceful. Now keep in mind, Dipper dying at any point before the end of Gideon Rises means that Stan never comes into possession of Journal 3, and thus he's never able to make the portal operational, stranding Ford in the Nightmare Realm forever. Or it might leave Stan vulnerable to Bill's manipulation, as he's more desperate than before to fix the portal. But I don't think even the most dire circumstances would stop Stan from recognizing a fellow con artist. No shot he ever shakes Bill's hand unless it's to trick the demon himself. Next up is Blind Eye Dipper. As likely as it is that this Dipper is from a timeline where McGucket didn't save him from getting zapped by Blind Ivan, not only did it seem like the society just wanted to mind wipe them and throw them off their tracks rather than indoctrinate them, I also think there's room for a more compelling story. One where Dipper chooses to don the red robe. Dipper is a character who craves knowledge. He has a strong desire to learn everything there is to know about the world around him. It's why Bill is such a compelling villain for the show, because he has all the answers. He knows he can exploit Dipper's curiosity for his own benefit. For Dipper to sacrifice knowledge, he would have to be at his lowest point, where he's pushed past his limits and feels like he's seen far too much, hence covering his eyes with the hood. Not only does that embody the sentiment that ignorance is bliss, but it also sells a certain expression. Blind Eye Dipper looks very ashamed of himself. That drove him to start wiping the minds of Gravity Falls, himself included. So what exactly am I getting at? Well, I was thinking if Dipper's gonna fold and join the Blind Eye, then he needs to be in a terrible state of mind prior to the events of this episode. Something that would leave him racked with guilt. This is a timeline where one bad move derailed his entire summer. And coming through the series, I think I know where there could have been a divergence point that led to everything everything in Dipper's life falling apart. Into the bunker. That episode had so many close calls for the Mystery Shack crew, but there's only one moment where someone's life falls directly into Dipper's hands. And that's when the shapeshifter is fighting with Wendy. Dipper desperately tries to decipher which Wendy is the real deal. And although he ends up striking the shapeshifter in the timeline we're familiar with, what if in another reality he swung at the wrong Wendy? What if Dipper killed Wendy? What if he crossed paths with the blind eye, obtained a memory gun, and wiped his mind of anything Wendy? What if he wiped the whole town's memory of Wendy? What if the corduroys have no clue that there's a fourth kid missing from their family? Okay, that might be a bit much, but I do think something catastrophic like Wendy dying would lead Dipper to the blind eye. The gang is able to cover up the details so Dipper doesn't get in prison for murder, but Dipper feels guilty all the same. No words can change that. He feels incapable of redemption or salvation, feeling as if Wendy died because of his own selfishness. His pursuit for knowledge led directly to the demise of his friend, someone he cares for deeply, so he throws all of it away. While grieving, he's approached by one of the Blind Eye members and is sent down a dark path, helping keep the supernatural secrets of the town hidden from the masses so no one ever ends up in his position. Not to mention, if someone finds out that he's responsible for Wendy's death, he has to ensure that the truth stays a secret. Driven to the point of insanity, Blind Eye Dipper dreams of a reality where everything can go back to normal. Now I can see Blind Eye Mabel being the result of two scenarios: Dipper dying at any point prior to the events of the Society of the Blind Eye, or Blind Eye even giving her a very interesting proposition. If something happened to Dipper, the entire town would be in mourning. He and Mabel made a name for themselves in Gravity Falls pretty quickly, so there'd be more eyes on Mabel than ever before, as everyone's worried about her, on top of her being sent back home sooner than later. While she's still in town, the Society of the Blind Eye would offer Mabel a chance to wipe her memory of brothers. But she knows that the Mystery Shack crew in particular wouldn't just move on from Dipper, they talk about him all the time. So she wipes everyone's memory of brothers, ensuring Dipper never comes up in conversation again. But Wendy forgets who her brothers are, creating a rather confusing situation for her at home. And if Stan forgot everything he knew about brothers, he'd forget about Ford, never finishing the portal and leaving Ford stranded in the Nightmare Realm. Alternatively, maybe Blind Ivan has a lucky guess and pieces together that Dipper and Mabel's parents might be getting a divorce, getting Mabel to join the Blind Eye with the goal of reuniting with her parents, so she can blast the idea of a divorce right out of their memory, hoping the Blind Eye keep the masses in blissful ignorance until that day arrives. Wax statue Dipper is a bit trickier to figure out because, as far as we know, the wax statues were cursed, but they couldn't pass that curse along to human beings and turn them into statues. Who knows though? Maybe that was something they had up their sleeve, a hidden power reserved as a last-ditch effort to curse other people, defeating Dipper and Mabel during their big battle and turning them into wax statues, melting the twins shortly after, forcing them to experience the same death they dealt onto the replicas. This wax Dipper could just represent Dipper getting killed by the wax statues and isn't meant to be literal, and ultimately it probably was just cool for the whole piece. But I don't like settling for boring answers. That's not what we do here. 16-bit Dipper might be a fate worse than death, as it implies that he'll spend the rest of his days getting beaten over and over in Fight Fighters. Because let's be real, who's going to be a Dipper main? He's been nerfed to hell and back. So I'm thinking if there's a hidden code to bring Rumble Skirmish into the real world, then maybe there's a code that can bring a real human being into the game, which happened to this Dipper, trapping him inside the arcade cabinet, and bringing the events of Fight Fighters to a screeching halt. Alternatively, Giffany did plan to download Zeus's brain into Romance Academy 7, so perhaps something similar happened to Dipper here. Or it's possible that in another timeline, the events of Fight Fighters unfolded mostly the same until Rumble hit Dipper with a different finishing move. One that didn't just fuck Dipper up, but actually put him in the grave. And since he was slain by a video game character, his soul respawned through a 16-bit iteration in the game. Now this Dipper is left with nothing but bitter emotion, waiting for someone to put in the cheat code that can set him free. Let's knock out two birds with one stone and tackle Shears Dipper and Amulet Mabel, as their variants that hail from the same episode. Shear's Dipper is pretty straightforward. Mabel isn't able to save him from Gideon in time during the events of the Hand of the Rocks to Mabel, and as a result, Dipper gets stabbed in the back by Shears, leaving Mabel all alone. Mabel gets sent right back home. Stan has a falling out with Dipper and Mabel's parents at the very least. Gideon wins, eventually attains journal number 3, and ends up taking over the town, as the twins are no longer there to stop him. Amulet Mabel is a much more interesting story. You could get a lot of fancy fanfics out of this setup. Amulet Mabel is a Mabel who fails to save Dipper and Gideon with Gideon's amulet, causing the two to plummet to their death. Overwhelmed with guilt and struggling to cope with her brother's demise, Mabel keeps the amulet and runs away into the woods, mastering her newfound magical ability to dive deep into the supernatural weirdness of Gravity Falls, hoping to find a way to bring her brother back to life, or find a reality where he's still alive. Mabel with a dash of Raven or Scarlet Witch. You dig the vision? Imagine the rabbit hole that could send Mabel down, learning about Bill's cipher in the Zodiac, trying to prevent Wyrmageddon from happening, as she knows that if her brother's dead, then the prophecy is impossible to fulfill, and all the while she's haunted by the ghost of Gideon. Like, his actual ghost. You know his ass ain't gonna rest easy. Next we have a variant that I overlooked in my original video, Dipper clone number 2. Better known as Tyrone, the clone that Dipper arguably got the closest to, even if natural selection played a big part in that. However, I don't think this is Tyrone in the illustration. I actually think that this is this universe's Dipper. Yeah, play the dramatic music, this is kinda crazy. Tyrone originally was the last clone standing in Double Dipper, aside from Dipper clones 3 and 4, who ran off into the woods. Well, actually according to Journal 3 lore, they came back to the party, hid in Dipper's closet, and then ran into the woods after they were busted. What if instead of calling a truce, Tyrone in this timeline pulled an old switcheroo, imprisoning Dipper while he assumes his life, forcing Dipper into the role of clone number 2. Maybe clones 3 and 4 are keeping watch of this Dipper in the woods. Either way, he's not happy having his precious summer memories stolen from him. Of course, there's also the possibility that Tyrone took over his life and just murdered him. Tyrone spending his days avoiding liquids at all costs. Submarine Dipper is a variant where my thoughts haven't really changed all too much. This is a timeline where Dipper, Mabel, and the gang all got eaten by the submarine trickster like Gordy, but they weren't freed in time to escape digestion. Or, if the submarine trickster doesn't digest people, they could just be slowly rotting inside his body, surviving off candy but having no water to keep themselves hydrated. I guess you could say it's a rather sweet death. Oh, brother! Well, I thought it was funny. No, I didn't. Right below Summerwing Dipper, we have a Mabel variant that I wasn't able to identify in my original video, but now I know for a fact is likely a Mabel who died or lost her Dipper during the events of the Legend of the Gobblewonker, their second summer adventure. Revisiting this episode, odds are the twins were killed during the Gobblewonker chase. Like, it really is luck that anyone would survive a crash like this. The power of the Toon Force was absolutely on their side here, but clearly it wasn't in every universe. Since McGucket was the one piloting this mechanical beast, odds are he'd be sent to prison for not only the Gobblewonker, but causing the deaths of Dipper, Mabel, and Seuss. And if McGucket goes to jail, the Society of the Blind Eye is never defeated, Ford may never come out of the portal, and the two never have their reconciliation. Which means this is probably a timeline where Gideon or Bill wins. Man, this is a dark video, huh? Zombie Mabel and Zombie Dipper are two more straightforward stories. They're just really heartbreaking. It's become a pretty popular idea that these undead twins are a result of Stan failing to save them in Scarioki, and I completely agree. Mostly because it would be a huge gut punch. Not only would Stan carry immense guilt for losing more family members in a situation where he feels as if he wasn't fast enough, but Dipper's final moments would have been the lad blaming himself for getting everyone wrapped up in his quest for answers.
I wanted answers so bad I put everyone in danger. Now we're toast, it's all my fault, and no one can save us!
This would also mean that the invisible ink in the journals was likely never discovered, so no one would have learned that a 3-part harmony is the key to defeating the zombies, and no one would have discovered the cure to reversing zombification. Odds are the entire town became zombies, either leading to a worldwide apocalypse, or Gravity Falls getting blown up to smithereens by the government, neutralizing the zombie outbreak before it gets too out of control. Wow, again, this is not a happy video. Let's try to lighten the mood with Smile Dip Mabel. I mean, I don't really have anything to add from the first time I talked about this. Mabel got lost in the Smile Dip sauce, and she never came down from that high. If she didn't die from a sugar-induced overdose, then she might just be tripping for the rest of the summer, her warped perception of reality leaving her prone to danger. Bill doesn't even need to make Mabel land anymore. Time displaced Dipper is an interesting one, because he can be a result of either the time traveler's pig or Blendon's game. Maybe this Dipper and Mabel got killed while slingshotting themselves through time, or maybe the tape ended up malfunctioning during one of their time travel adventures, and Dipper's trapped in this purgatory-like state, unable to stabilize himself in this reality. Now things really get weird as we shed light on a fan favorite, Pipper, and by proxy, Dipper's lost soul. We can safely assume this is a timeline that branches off from the events of Sock Opera, but after being duped by Bill Cipher, Dipper is never able to recover his body. While it's completely possible that there's a world out there where Mabel failed to stop Bill, and the Dream Demon kept Dipper's body for the long haul, leaving Dipper as a lost soul for the rest of his days, we can't ignore the morbid alternative provided in Journal 3, where Bill planned to jump off the water tower in Dipper's body, killing Dipper in the process. And since Bill can possess corpses, who's to say he couldn't get some more mileage out of Pine Tree? But I think there's a third path worth tossing out there. What if Bill lured Dipper into a dynamic that's identical to the one he had with Ford, where he's able to move in and out of Dipper's body whenever he pleases, striking this deal around the events of Sock Opera like before, so he just has to string Dipper along for a couple of weeks as Stan is on the verge of restarting the portal. By the time Ford meets Dipper, it's already too late. Bill's 2 steps ahead, and as soon as Ford shows Dipper that rift, it's Weirdmageddon time. Pipper and Ford aren't the only Bill-possessed pines out there in the multiverse, as we evidently have a universe where Mabel, or Babel, exists. Bill learned from trying to infiltrate Mabel's mind that she was desperate to make summer last forever, so perhaps there was a timeline where he reached out to her without possessing Blendon, tricking her into making a deal so he can take control of her body and destroy the rift. Maybe Bill ensnares Mabel in an illusion like he did with Dipper, making it seem like the laptop was counting down, when in reality, nothing was happening to it whatsoever. What if he leads Mabel to believe that Dipper is on death's door, on the verge of passing in his sleep, forcing Mabel to strike a deal with him, as she believes it's the only way to ensure that Dipper is saved as fast as possible, only for Mabel to discover that Dipper's actually fine, but it's far too late. Bill's already in control of her body. Maybe Bill strikes a deal with Mabel around the events of Sock Opera instead of Dipper, still deceiving Mabel by asking for a puppet, making his move once the portal restarts, given how instrumental Mabel was to that moment. It makes the most sense to me, given that Sock Opera was what cemented Bill as a huge threat in the eyes of Dipper and Mabel. But who knows? Maybe there's another moment that's perfect for Cypher to swoop in. Feel free to spitball in the comments. Northwest Dipper is another one where we can be quick to the point. Pacifica never committed to her change of heart and never opened the gates of the Northwest Mansion. Instead, she let the fear of her parents outweigh all sense of reason, keeping everyone at the party petrified, and odds are, she dies in that mansion with her parents. A lack of action can have consequences too. Tiny Dipper and Mabel. Gideon shrank them and they were never able to return back to normal. Pretty easy. Maybe they ended up getting stopped and killed while they were tiny. Maybe they ended up turning the tables on Gideon and killed him, but they're still the size of Smurfs. Either way, they look deranged. We have a hand that has to be Dipper or Mabel encased in amber or tree sap, meaning they lost big time during the events of The Land Before Swine. An episode that revealed Gravity Falls is secretly home to a ton of dinosaurs who are frozen in suspended animation. The tree sap keeping them in this state has begun to melt and is slowly freeing all the dinos. I just think the twins weren't lucky in this timeline and ended up getting trapped in some of this sap, but considering they're a fraction of the size of these dinosaurs, I imagine they'd either be preserved in this amber or are presumed to be dead. But hey, President Tremblay survived being encased in peanut brittle, so running with that logic, they should be fine. But I imagine if only one twin got trapped, then the other became fixated on saving them, which runs its own risk, and that could motivate them to find a universe where they're alive and well. It's unsettling to think of a timeline where Dipper or Mabel are like full-blown adults, and they're still trying to rescue their 12-year-old sibling from suspended animation, desperate to return to their childhood. I'm gonna derail for a second and run through some of the undocumented universes that aren't pictured in this spread, but more than likely exist if we're taking Bill's claim seriously. Hunting around! There's definitely a timeline where the twins don't survive the car crash and not what he seems. Dipper and Ford could have been killed by the Impossibeast, losing the game in Dungeons, and more dungeons. There's a timeline where Stan fails to save the twins, and they're blown up by Gideon in the Stanchurian Candidate. There's probably a timeline where Mabel and her friends are killed by the unicorns in the last Mabelcorn, losing the brawl. The kids fail to save Stan and get killed by Darlene in Roadside Attraction. Love hurts. Dipper touches the adhesive and has all of his orifices sewed up, or he gets killed during the prison droid chase in Dipper and Mabel vs. the Future. And finally, Dipper gets killed in the Mad Max-esque car chase during Weirdmageddon. Yeah, sorry if this video was a bummer, but I'm having fun. Last but not least, we have petrified Dipper and Mabel, which I originally speculated could have happened at any point during Armageddon, but a more popular idea is that it happened during the climax of the episode, right before Stan and Ford tricked Bill, the moment Bill captures Dipper and Mabel and threatens to kill one of them.
Eeny, meeny, miny, you!
What if the you and the eeny meeny miny you was actually both of the twins? Bill giving Ford the finger for turning him down by transforming his niece and nephews into statues. Perhaps this would have broken Ford, and he finally caves, only for Bill to destroy the statues instead of turning Dipper and Mabel back to normal. And there you have it, every timeline where Dipper and Mabel either lost a battle or their lives. Do you agree with these scenarios, or do you envision something a little different? Let us know in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going over on Instagram and Twitter at OffTrickFox and at Roundtable Vids. Welcome back to Muni Mayhem! I'm OffTrickFox, and that's right, another Muni Mayhem? Months after the show ended, what is going on here? Well, last week Darren FC hosted an AMA on Reddit, Ask Me Anything, and while a lot of questions were overlooked, we still got some pretty juicy answers on others, such as, will there be another season? Where's Tarsus? What was Toffee's deal? Marco's monster arm? And so much more. So as always, we're gonna run through these questions, break them down, and start a conversation. With all that said, let's dive in. So to kick this off, let's get right to the juicy bits. Why did they decide to make an open ending with the possibility of closing it with another story, and at the same time throwing away all the work or history that was behind? Is there anything planned to officially close the story? To which Nefsi replied, my goal was to create a satisfying ending that still left room for more. I feel like it's in the DNA of the universe to solve one problem but create another. That's Star Butterfly. I know it may not have been satisfying for everyone, but I hope it inspires a lot of fan fictions and drawings. I didn't want to solve everything and leave the fans nothing to play with. Plus, if I ever got to do more of Star, I want something to play with. And there's no conclusive ending planned at this time. So yes, Cleaved is the ending of a chapter for Star while starting a brand new one, a chapter that Darren Nefsi possibly wants to explore, given that Disney gives her a chance. It's apparent Star vs. the Forces of Evil is only over because Disney decided it was over. They accounted for the scenario where they would not receive any more episodes, and thus wrote Season 4 at a place where it could feel like a finite ending, but the Avengers of Star and Marco do not conclude here, which is kind of obvious as Earth and Mooney are cleaved together. That brings about a lot of change, likely positive and negative, and even if it does feel impossible, I really hope we'll get to see it someday. Alright, next question I want to focus on, will Star join Ludo for a game of basketball? Are they friends now? To which Nefsi stated, oh, they are totally going to be playing basketball. I can't wait for the day that Ludo makes his first slam dunk. So yes, Star and Ludo are buddies. Although Star never really took Ludo seriously as a threat, it's great to see they have a better dynamic now, and Ludo did offer her to play a game of ball in the finale. Well, I wish we got more of Ludo in Season 4. If we ever get a continuation, I really hope he has a bigger role to play, because it's what the boy deserves. Like many fans, Star and Marco's relationship was my biggest draw to the show, and I adored it throughout and thought the way it was resolved was one of the most sincere and powerful depictions of what love can be that I've seen in fiction in a while. But I'd still have loved to see them progress as a couple before the series ended, like the major couples similar character-driven shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Parks and Recreation, or like many finally remember, Kim Possible. Were there any specific reasons you chose to keep them as friends or keep other relationships going until just before the very end, despite the clear depth of their mutual romantic feelings in the Season 3 finale? And if you were to get the opportunity to make more Star vs. Force of Evil content, would developing the relationship further, while portrayed as a couple, still likely be one of the focuses? To which Nefsi said, I'm glad you enjoyed the Star and Marco storyline. It was important to me to treat them like real teenagers. As we all know, relationships are messy. One thing I personally don't like are storylines where characters' first relationships are also their last ones. The whole Prince Charming thing. That's a lie. That's just not life. They need to date other people and have other experiences. I'm not sure what Star and Marco's future looks like, but I know they are very much in love now. So there you have it. Star and Marco didn't end up together from the get-go because Nefsi wanted to see them date other people. Because that's reality. You may not end up with the first person you date. More than likely, you'll go through a few different relationships or flings before you find your happily ever after. While I wish Star and Marco did get together earlier in the season, I'm still content with the point it occurred. Next up, a question about Toffee. Did Toffee plan for Star to destroy magic after his death, or did he think he won until he got face blasted? To which Nefsy responded, he thought he won until he got face blasted. Ouch. So yes, through the power of literal pure magic, Star was able to completely topple Toffee. Although it makes me wonder, during Toffee's final moments, he did remark, "You think you've won? Only I know how this all turns out." So was that just him being boastful? Trying to intimidate our cast into thinking, oh no, even if we kill him, he's still gonna have the upper hand somehow? Toffee's just kind of an enigma of his own, but I wish he did foresee Star destroying magic. It would have shown how much he truly left a mark on the series. What did you, Darren Nefsy, feel about the petition for season 5? Nefsy answered this with, "I think it's great. I hope someone pays attention." Yeah, really laying it on that she wants to do more Star. Hey Disney, take notes. You can still make money off this property. Please, someone tweet to them. Write letters if you have to. Next up, a question revolving around the status quo after the finale. Were all dimensions cleaved, or was it just Earth and Muni? Nefsy clarified, just Earth and Muni. So yes, Star, Marco, for now they're still separated from Kelly, from Tad, from any of their friends who are from different dimensions. And it just leaves the series on a bittersweet ending, which isn't bad. That is reality, but I thought cartoons were supposed to make me happy, man. Moving on, was Starco something that was planned from the beginning, or did the fan reaction from the first season influence it all? And was the monster arm planned to come back? The season 1 finale kind of hinted it, but nothing came from it. Ooh. Nefsy answered, I did have Starco planned for some time. I know people got very into the shipping, which is cool, but I never intended for people to get so crazy. I wanted to treat them like real teenagers, and their relationships as teenagers would. 2, to be honest, we tried to write the Monster Arm Return episode many times, but we could never really get it to work. I believe it's still in Marco, and it still might emerge someday. Oh my god, Monster Arm got information! So yes, Marco's Monster Arm was a spell that transformed Marco's arm into a giant tentacle. It was a horrible influence on him, almost killed Jeremy, and as the spell was being undone, the Monster Arm alluded to the fact that it would return someday, that Marco can never get rid of him. The Monster Arm's return was foreshadowed throughout the series multiple times. And yeah, nothing came from it, but now we know they wanted to bring him back, they just didn't know how. Which makes me wonder how this scrap storyline would have played out. What were those scenarios they tried to write the Monster Arm back in? I've tried to draw my own conclusions on how they could have tackled this storyline, and I think looking back at the series, the best spot would have been in season 3 or season 4, with Eclipsa. The episode Curse with Blood Moon revealed that Marco was confiding his feelings for Star to Eclipsa for quite some time. They formed a bond. And while it was great to know that the world was still spinning off screen, an episode showing that bond form would have been great. Imagine a Marco and Eclipsa adventure, much like how Eclipsa was encouraging Star to follow her dream portaling. Imagine if Marco informed Eclipsa about all the magic shenanigans him and Star have been through, including the Monster Arm, and how Marco fears it could return. To which Eclipsa encouraged him, why wait in fear? We can just try to bring him out, confront him once and for all, and then we'll figure out a way for you to just be rid of him forever. But of course this would have backfired. I don't know, I'm just saying. They could have done it. They could have done it. Next up, more post-finale questions. Did Tom lose his portal powers so he can't travel to the underworld? And the Ponyheads. Why don't they have real bodies? Where are theirs? Who is Queen Ponyhead? Nefsy stated, Tom can still travel. Magic might be gone, but he's still a demon, and that the Ponyheads evolved out of their bodies thousands of years ago through evolution because they didn't need them. Queen Ponyhead sadly passed away. So while those are disturbing and sad facts about the Ponyhead family, it's nice to know that because Tom's still a demon, he still has his demon underworld powers. Much like how the Ponyheads can still fly. It's just a natural evolution of each species. Now, a human at one point could have been able to learn Tom's abilities through magic, and they would have lost those powers because they are human. It's not a natural born ability to them like it is to a demon. So yeah, Tom powers, no magic. Human powers, magic. Don't think too hard about it. Next up, do you still have plans with Star vs. the Forces of Evil? I mean, there could be a possible movie or a book that shows us what happens after the end. And did you really plan for the series to last longer than you were allowed to? And oh boy, was this a meaty answer. I would love to. Keep asking for it and maybe one day it'll happen. Hate it? Keep saying it. But I can't just decide to do it. The studio needs to feel like the show is popular enough to warrant it, or even that there is a need to make it. And 2, this is a little bit complicated question. I was very lucky to get 4 seasons. For a variety variety of very boring reasons, most animated shows for kids only get about 2 or 3 seasons max, so I feel very lucky that I got to do 4 on Star. When our 4th season got approved, I knew that it would most likely be the end, just because of the rarity of having a 4th season. So I wrote an ending. I was happy with the ending. I know a lot of fans thought it was rushed, but I think it just means you want more. I would love to do more of Star someday. Obviously, that decision is not one I can just make, but if the powers that be wanted to make more Star, I would love to work with them again. Disney, come on, she's pretty much begging. And I'm surprised Disney does not see how popular Star can be. During season 3, clips of Star were getting millions upon millions of views. It was kinda nuts. Listen, no tea, no shade, but the reason why Star declined in viewership and I guess popularity between season 3 and season 4, it wasn't because of the show itself. I'll just leave it at that. Next up, I think this is just a fascinating look into Darren Nefsey's history. Did your experiences in school affect how it was portrayed in the show? I know Marco was a successful student that ended up getting his GED. To which Nefsey said, yeah, I would say some of my high school experiences made it in. The GED one for sure. I actually didn't graduate high school. I was getting badly bullied, so I took the GED test and left early. Best decision I ever made. Next up, another post-finale question. Are the laser puppies alive? To which Nefsey clarified, yes, they're just regular puppies now. Thank God, thank God, thank God, oh my God. Alright, so you're probably wondering, well, wait, they were made of magic. How are they still alive? And to give you guys an answer, we have to look at what happened to Omnitraxis and Romulus after they died with the destruction of magic. It's not like they just melted away completely. Similar to the unicorns in the realm of magic, instead, anything that their bodies were composed of that had non-magical counterparts remained after their death, such as Omnitrax's skull, Romulus's crystal, and his snakes, which we saw were still sentient. So the snakes were able to endure, remain sentient, but lose their ability to speak. It's not far-fetched that the puppies would survive and just no longer be able to shoot off lasers. Makes sense in the context of what we saw in the show. Let's continue. Next up, rewinding back to season 3, in the season 3 finale Conquer, why did Meteora turn to a baby and lose her memories when hit by Black Velvet Inferno? The force of the attack and the moment after Eclipse used the spell implied that the spell should have killed Meteora, to which Nefsey dove in and stated, Eclipse wanted to give Meteora a second chance. For a moment, she didn't know the spell would work. It was a desperate spell that could have easily killed her, but the results were just what Eclipse wanted. So yes, Eclipse took a gamble on Meteora. We still don't know why Meteora regrets into a baby. I still think it's because all of the youth and soul she sucked up, and maybe Eclipse recognized that, feeling in her gut that there was a small chance that Meteora could survive, and she was right. Or perhaps it was the will of Eclipse that as she was firing the spell, aiming to kill Meteora, she was also in her mind lamenting, man, I just want my baby back. And well, she got her baby back. Next up, what even is a Warnicorn? To which Nefsey clarified, it's a unicorn that needs the blood of its enemies to survive. Yikes. Alright, now we have some bigger questions revolving around Toffee and Seth. Number 1, how did Toffee know about the whispering spell and its effects, considering not even Moon knew? She was desperate when Star performed in Battle of Muni, so I assume she thought it was just a self-destruction spell. He studied some books, but these things don't seem like the kind of stuff that would be in them, considering they weren't even in the Book of Spells. How was Toffee able to be in the realm of magic without losing his mind, and meanwhile corrupting the magic? Why did Toffee have skulls with cheek marks of Eclipse on his shoulders during Battle for Muni? Was he the one who killed Solaria? Which were even the details of his plan, since they were never entirely clear. After that, why and how did the painting of Alfonso Worthy, Eclipse's father, talk to Marco in the Blood Moon Ball episode? And about the Blood Moon, was it originally designed as a blessing by you authors, instead of a curse like it ended up being? And last but not least, what about Severus of Tarsus? Considering his role in the Book of Spells, literally everyone was expecting to see him in the last season. Alright, brace yourself for some of these answers. Toffee was a historian and researched the butterfly family like no one ever has before. He used his powers for evil. He's been learning about magic for a very long time. The skulls Toffee was wearing was butterfly family members of the royal court he killed. When it comes to the Blood Moon Ball, Alphonse communicated through Marco with magic, and Nefsey believes that the Blood Moons were for curse and the blessing. And last but not least, Seth has been dead for a long time. We only get so many episodes per season, so he'll just need to be in the book for now. So yeah, it just sounds like Seth is dead because the show's over, and if they get more, he will become undead, I guess? I don't know, multiple people in the Star crew were involved with this AMA. One of them being a former writer elaborated that Seth could be the antagonist for season 5. I'm gonna do a separate video with those questions, but yikes. Seth deserved better, or just shouldn't have existed at all. Next up is Doof alive? Nefsey said, nope, nope. Wouldn't he just be a regular broom now? And there you have it, those are the more interesting questions. Again, a lot didn't get answered, like if Star committed mass genocide by destroying magic. But you know, that's a hero's gig. Part of the journey is the end. I don't know if that made sense in this context, I just wanted to quote Avengers Endgame. But I want to hear your thoughts on all this. What do you think? Are you satisfied, dissatisfied? Do you want to know more? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at OstricVox. We're also on Instagram. Welcome back to Mini Mayhem! I'm OstricVox, and now that Star vs. the Force of Evil has come to a close, I want to look back on one of the most creative, insane parts of the series, the spells. The thing about Star is that the Royal Wand has had many users throughout the years, both queens and some non-royalty, which has led to different spells that serve different purposes. So I thought, why not go back, look at all of the spells, categorized by their different types in alphabetical order, and get a taste of each queen's different style. With all that said, let's dive in with offensive spells. Also props to the Star Wiki for compiling all of these, starting with Bacon Kitty White Nightmare, invented by Star Butterfly. It's a blast of three-eyed kittens, bacon, and pineapples. So pretty much some diverse pizza toppings. Next we have Black Widow Calamity Cobweb, invented by Eclipsa, which creates an energy web that traps targets. We first saw this spell in Radiating Fire, when Eclipsa was combating the Solarian warrior Dug Dug. Next is Blueberry Cupcake Bazooka, of course invented by Star, which creates a bazooka that fires blueberry cupcakes at a target. This first appeared in Yada Yada Berries when Star was trying to track down the one responsible for trying to Yada Yada Eclipsa. How about Bunny Rabbit Blast? Of course invented by Star, and you know, I think I'm just gonna let you guys assume they're invented by Star unless I say otherwise. These shoot a powerful blast of energy and bunnies. And while this is an offensive spell, Star actually uses it for agility, leaping a far distance with it and the other exchange student. Now we know some spells can do some serious damage, and some are just implied to do some serious damage. One of the latter is Cataclysmic Total Extinction Death Blast. Star was going to use this spell on a mosquito, but was interrupted by Marco in the episode Camping Trip. We can assume whatever it wasn't going to be pretty. Dang, now I wish it came back into play during the series. We can just pretend that's the spell Star used on Toffee. Next, going back to the Queen of Darkness, we have Cold Shoulder Ice Storm, which gives the target a literal cold shoulder, encasing the body part in ice. Romulus was a victim of this in the episode Swimsuit. Speaking of Romulus, let's shift over to Eclipse's mother, Solaria Butterfly, with the Crystal Pulverizing spell, which is meant to break apart any crystals, especially those made by Romulus, as during the Monster Mumin War, a lot of the Solarian warriors got caught in Romulus's crossfire. Eclipsa almost used a spell on Globgor, but Romulus beat her to the punch. After that, we have an iconic spell, Cupcake Blast. Star has used this many times throughout the series. It simply summons pink cupcakes that can be thrown at people. Although another name for this is also Poison Crystal Cupcake Kiss. An attack we didn't see as often, however, is Dagger Crystal Heart Attack, which simply shoots heart-shaped daggers that are used as projectiles. These first appeared in Matchmaker and also go by Dagger Heart Blast. Now, a spell that we know exists, but never actually saw for eyes, is Flying Pig Blast, that Star sounded out in Spider with a Top Hat. We see there's a Flying Pig spell in Star's wand, so yeah, these guys get thrown around a lot. There's also Glitter Well Battering Ram, which shoots out a small whale to ram through a door. We first saw this instead of a hoodie when Star was trying to rescue Marco's hoodie from being washed. Now here's a spell we actually first saw after Star gave up the wand, Glittery Heart-Shaped Blast, which simply blasts the target with glittery heart-shaped energy. Now one of my favorites, just because of how insanely unique it is Glowworm Blast, which shoots blue glowworms that explode on impact. Seriously, if they ever made like a Star video game, I would abuse this spell to no end. Now as we all know, Marco briefly wielded the wand twice in the series. His second and final time in the series finale saw the birth of his own offensive spell, Kitten Bomb, which creates kitten-like bombs shaped like Marco's head with his own hairstyle that explodes shortly after. You know, if Marco had more practice with the wand, I think this would definitely be a spell to be reckoned with. Back to Star and her lethal spells, there's Laser Beam Blast, which appeared in Marco Jr. It's simply a white-hot laser that reduces its target to ashes. Yeah, geez, never make Star angry. She may have used it on a painting, but I don't think an organic being would fare any better against it. Now while Star has some pretty cool spells, it's really hard to deny that Moon Butterfly kinda has her bested in a lot of areas. Namely with her Light Sword spell, which she first used against Toffee in the episode Star Crushed. It simply generates a blade of energy from the wand's tip, but oh my god, do I love this! What about something a bit more delicious, like Star's Macaroon Melee Swarm? This was briefly used in Swimsuit, but it surrounds the target in a ring of floating macaroons. Seriously, dessert is on Star. There's Makeup Blast, which also appeared in Spider with a Top Hat, which presumably creates a blast of makeup. Mega Starfish Tsunami from Bon Bon the Birthday Clown that creates a blast of rushing water and starfishes. Beach Day! Mega Mushroom Destruction Blast, which first appeared in Fortune Cookies, is a blast of mushrooms that causes enemies to grow mushrooms on their bodies. Yeah, if you're allergic, good luck. I think we all know this next one. Definitely Star's staple spell, Narwhal Blast, which, as we know, shoots a stream of narwhals to fly everywhere and land on enemies. We've also seen this as Mega Narwhal Blast and Nightmare Narwhal Blast. Back to Moon, there's the Neon Whip spell. Again, she uses against Toffee, but it generates an energy whip from the wand's tip. We didn't see much of this, but I can recognize that it's definitely very useful in battle. Pile Driver Panda Explosion. Again, this appeared inside of a hoodie, invented by Star, and it shoots a stream of pandas to fly everywhere, and it blows things up. There's Poison Gas Manipulation, which creates a cloud of poisonous gas. This is one of the many spells Eclipse used on Romulus that she had to undo. Pyre Narwhal Avalanche Explosion, which was sounded off in Mama Star, but we actually didn't see this spell, and we don't really know what it does. Radical Rainbow Blast, which appeared in Star vs. Echo Creek. It creates a blast of rainbow lights. Very pretty. Rainbow Avalanche, which first appeared in Quest Buy. It creates a blast of liquid rainbow that can strike in multiple spots. However, this can appear as a mere trickle when Star's wand is low on power. Another recognizable spell by Star is Rainbow Blast, where Star shoots a rainbow, hearts, and winged bunnies at her target. Another spell we saw Star use with and without her wand is Rainbow Fist Punch, which is pretty self-explanatory, and it also comes in the form of Double Rainbow Fist and Rainbow Fist Grab. Next up, definitely in my top 5 spells of all time, is Rainbow Kaiju Battle Armor. Definitely an upgrade from the previous spell. This encases Star in a giant rainbow aura, and is used for battling large enemies, like Star against the Solarian Warrior. I definitely wish we got more screen time of the spell. It was amazing, and I wanted to see a Star would conjure up like a sword of her own with this armor. Is that possible? Well, I guess anything's possible with the wand, as it's just to capture its imagination, but God, we need more of this show! Moving on, there's Rolling Thunder Lightning Blast, which fires a blast of thunder and lightning. Raspberry Panzerfaust, that launches a magic missile that destroys or blows up distant targets. Shimmering Destructo Cannon creates a heart-themed bazooka that fires missiles from numerous ports. Shooting Star Explosion, this shoots explosive shooting stars. Sparkle Lightning Blast shoots a stream of electricity. Spider with a Top Hat Blast, which simply summons Spider with a Top Hat, who can transform his hat into a minigun. Ah, what a trooper. Stardust Daisy Devastation shoots a yellow energy beam of daisies. Strawberry Annihilation, which fires a powerful strawberry blast of energy. Super Geyser Windstorm creates a blast of rushing water. Super Dolphin Slap shoots a stream of dolphins and starfish. Super Strawberry Shakequake creates a blast of strawberries. Supersonic Leech Bomb summons a pack of leeches which stick on a surface and then explodes after several short beeps. Syrup Tsunami Shockwave summons a tidal wave of maple syrup to wash away enemies. Thermonuclear Butterfly Blast creates an explosion of fire and butterflies in a localized area. Tiara Tornado showers surrounding targets with a volley of crowns and tiaras. Now, Star actually first attempted this spell in the Benagic incident, but successfully pulled it off in Raid the Cave. There's Toothpaste Tidal Blast, which assumably creates a tidal wave of toothpaste, minty fresh, and Winter Storm Hyperblow, which creates a blast of frigid air that causes freezing. Now, some unnamed offensive spells is an unnamed bow and arrow spell, which transforms the wand into a bow, and Missile Launcher spell, which fires an explosive missile from the wand's head. Now let's move to creation spells. There's Brutum Fulmin, created by Cressida Butterfly, that creates thunderbolts. Bullet Spiro, which creates a bubble of air around its casters. Cressida invented this spell, but Star used it in the episode Star vs. Echo Creek. There's Cutting Candy Cloud, which creates a pink cloud that spits out spaghetti and meatballs. Mamma mia! There's Creaky Knees, invented by Justin Butterfly the Boy Queen, that creates a cushy chariot seat. There's Exploding Incandescent Wrecking Ball Devastation, that creates a wrecking ball with a star-shaped ornament at the other end of its chain. There's Fireless Rainbow Spell, invented by Festivia, that creates a rainbow that is resistant to bursting into flames. Foaming Twinkle Bubble Ripple that creates a large clam-shaped hot tub. Honeybee Tornado Swarm that creates a swarm of honeybees. Labyrinthus, created by Crescenta, which creates an endless maze to trap the user's enemies. Oh yeah, I would be very frustrated. Magic Bubble Double Diffusion, which creates a pair of air bubbles around two targets to make them stop arguing. Oh, I need that at Thanksgiving. Back to Marco, there's Mixed Martial Arts Rainbow Thing, which creates a rainbow-colored playable tube sporting a karate uniform. I actually went a little bit more in depth with this spell in my breakdown of the finale, so check that out if you haven't. There's Festivia's Never-Ending Fireworks, which creates never-ending fireworks as long as the user keeps casting it. There's Radiant Rainbow Bridge, which creates a rainbow bridge. Rainbow Diaper Blast that magically gives a target a diaper and causes said target to float. There's Rainbow Fly Trap that creates a sticky rainbow-colored surface that acts as a fly trap. Rubber Sparkle Bounce House, which creates a bounce house or turns the interior of a closed space into a bounce house. Another name for this spell is Super Inflatable Bounce House Blast. There's Shimmering Crystal Sea Haw, which creates a sea haw made of crystal stone. Sparkle Kitten Fireworks Shower, which creates fireworks that explode into raining kittens. Squeaky Clean Bath Beam, which creates a bathtub filled with water and rubber ducks. And really quickly, some unnamed creation spells is a bed spell, a boot spell, a cake spell, a chew toy spell, a spider spell, a flaming rainbow spell. Skywind actually created an unnamed food creation spell. Apparently Star can just create Golden Crisp. Unnamed laser puppy creation spell, a love sentence t-shirt spell, a mustache spell, and an unnamed stretchy arm spell. Now let's shift gears to transmutation spells. There's Beanbag Monster Metamorphosis, which transforms a beanbag into a living creature. There's Blend In with Bathwater spell, created by Darhania Butterfly, which turns the user's skin to the same color as bathwater and renders them invisible in the bath. There's Eclipse's Body Swap spell, which, as we saw in her dispute against Romulus, causes the user and the target to switch bodies. There's Doop Doop, the living broom that was Star's very first spell. She turned the broom into a living, breathing creature. Good old Justin Roiland.
We could stay up all night and talk and paint our nails. I don't have arms, but that's okay.
There's Emerald Snake Strike, which can either create green snakes or you can turn an object into a green snake. There's Food Truck Bed Transform, which transforms a food truck into a bed. Glitter Dragon Escalation, which transforms a broken bridge into a dragon made out of energy to lift the bridge and get the user into the other side. Kitten Pegasus Battle Barrel, which turns a barrel into a flying barrel with cat eyes, paws, and a tail. Lamp Destroy, which turns the lamp sentient and chases a target with an electric plug. Lightning Twinkle Rescue, which shoots green cat-like faces which upon impact turns animated objects back to normal. There's Crescenta's Lupus Mutatus Sorrow, which transforms the target into a wolf. Crescenta also has Magus Armus, which gives the user or target additional arms. Back to Star's insane spells, there's Magnificent Marshmallow Mush, which turns the target or targets into marshmallows. Man Magnet Love Storm, which transforms the individual affected into a troll, as we saw in the beginning of the series with Skolnick. Mending Heart Hurricane, which returns a magically transformed person or animal to his original state. There's Novus Amabilis Scurius Corno, invented by Crescenta, that turns a squirrelicorn inside out. There's Star's Paper Tornado, which turns a pile of loose paper into a tornado. There's Crescenta's Papilio Moto Kaput, which gives a butterfly multiple heads and tugs. That's horrifying. You may remember Star's Porcupine Beast transformation, which transforms an object into a giant six-legged porcupine. There's Radiant Shadow Transform, which alters one's physical appearance. There's Crescenta's Releases Demonicious Infestica, which gives a person affected a tentacle for the arm. The tentacle does not act as part of the original body, but has a will of its own. We saw this with Marco's monster arm. So really, Crescenta is responsible for one of Marco's most traumatic experiences. Accompanying this spell is Returnio Arminus Normorino, which creates or transforms anything into a normal functioning arm, which removes the effects of the previous spell. So we can use that as a justification to why the monster arm never returned. There's Shimmer Soap Tentacle Wave, which turns clothes into tentacles that restrain the target. Soda Fountain spell, created by Festivia, that turns water into soda. Oh my god, I can just feel the diabetes by just reading that spell aloud. Another iconic Star spell is Sparkle Glitter Bomb Expand, which expands the space in a pre-existing location into an elaborate room. There's Sparkle Dust Beard Expand, which, as the name implies, greatly expands one's facial hair. Like, greatly expands. There's Sunshine Friendship spell that causes the person or creature affected to instantly be in a good, friendly mood, although effects do vary depending on the caster's emotions. There's Super Sparkle Carfly Wings, which adds a pair of wings to a vehicle and allows it to fly. And as for unnamed spells, there's Unnamed Anti-Solarian Metamorphosis spell, seemingly invented by Moon Butterfly, which reverses the effects to create a Solarian warrior. There's an Unnamed Butterfly Monster spell, which transforms a butterfly into a giant winged white and pink monster. There's an Unnamed Carrot spell that transforms the target into a large carrot. Unnamed Hairstyling spell, which magically styles the hair of the user or target. And last but not least, there's an Unnamed Wing spell, which adds wings to another living thing. Alright guys, we're only halfway through and this video is already pretty damn long, so it looks like the rest of these categories will be in part 2. Part 2. So to get the rest of these spells, be sure to subscribe with notifications on. And if you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like, it means the world to us. Welcome back to Mini Mayhem! I'm Vox, and we're back at it again with part 2 of every single spell in Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Now before we dive in, I actually want to address a pretty good question I saw a lot in the comments of the last video. Why are we going through every spell by category as opposed to by queen? And the answer is pretty simple. I originally intended to go by queen, but as you guys may have figured out from part 1, I quickly discovered that Star has an overwhelming amount of spells to her name as she's the main character, while the other queens don't have nearly as many spells. So it would be awkward to spend 2 or 3 minutes on a queen and then spend like 30-40 minutes on Star. This just works out way better. Alright, now that we're all on the same page, let's start with summoning spells. First things first, we got Cutie Kitten Clutter Cleaners, which summons a litter of kittens in maid outfits to clean up a dirty room or space. Glittery Mad Sparkle Piano, which summons a sentient talking piano. Yeah, try getting music lessons from that. Rainbow Raccoon Rotation, which summoned the raccoon meant to run on Father Time's wheel, so I can't say this spell would apply in many other places. Snail Helper Hype Blast, which summons blue snails with pink shields. These come in both normal and winged variations. Now this wasn't a spell in the show, but it came from the Disney XD mobile app, Creature Capture. Starlight Foot Smash, which summons a horse to slam its legs into an object and propel it into the air. Summoning Cloudy Charm, which summons Cloudy. Although, as we saw in the episode 1-to-1, Cloudy's emotions are dependent on the user's emotions and the current state of magic. When magic was corrupted, Cloudy was corrupted as a result. Summoning Razor Crane Charm, created by Comet Butterfly, which summons a flock of razor cranes. Sunshine Locker Slap, which summons a Minotaur to ram the target. Warnicore Stampede, which was actually invented by Skywind Butterfly, another one of more Star's iconic spells. It summons the Stampede of Warnicorns. Now Star actually revealed in the book of spells that Skywind's chapter is the only one she read from beginning to end in great detail. So even though Glosrick taught her this spell in by the book, of course this one would stick out to Star. She already loves Warnicorns and stampeding. Finishing off this category, there's Unnamed Sunshine spell, which summons a small happy sun that transforms into a rain cloud. Now I don't believe Star has used this spell since the very first episode of the series, so I'm assuming she conjured it up off screen prior to the destruction of magic. It may have just remained a happy, cool sun. Let's move on to physics-altering spells. There's Easy Peasy Time Freezy, created by Skywind Butterfly, that brings all time to a standstill. Star used this spell in the episode Freeze Day. Elevado, created by Quasar Caterpillar, which levitates one or more objects into the air, is a clear parody of Levitato. But hey, a spell's a spell. Even if this wasn't used by a wand, but a bell, and you know, Quasar and Star never really interacted, but we just gotta roll with the punches. Glitter Grenade Rewind, which rewinds a television program. Oh my god, this definitely would have came in handy before the DVR days. Infuriating Repeater, invented by Skywind Butterfly, which creates a 24-hour time loop. To cast, one must spin around clockwise and say Infuriating Repeater while sticking their pinky out. To undo the spell, they must spin around once counterclockwise, say while sticking their thumb out. Next up, you know it, you love it, Levitato, invented by Crescenta Butterfly, which levitates one or more objects into the air. This was a spell Star struggled with, whereas Ludo mastered it with flying colors. Lightning Changeback, which teleports the caster and other nearby targets to the caster's home. It's kind of like Thor, but a bit more magical.
Your ancestors called it magic, and you call it science.
Well, I come from a place where they're one and the same thing.
Mystic Room Suck Transform, which creates a wormhole in any designated space, whether on the ground or in the air, pulling everything nearby into the wormhole. There's also Unnamed Gravity Deletion Spell, invented by Skywind Butterfly, which reverses a dimension's gravitational pull and causes all of its inhabitants to float away into space. It was implied that some of these inhabitants actually went to Earth. The true origin of humans. There's an Unnamed Move Time Forward spell, also invented by Skywind, which pushes time forward by 10 minutes. There's Unnamed Telekinesis spell, which manipulates objects with the mind, and Unnamed Window spell, which creates an open window in a solid wall. Next up is Dark spells. You know, the kind I love, most of which invented by Eclipse Butterfly. There's the All-Seeing Eye, which allows users to peer into the lives of others. Spying leads to crying, and we know through Star exclusively that the gateway the All-Seeing Eye creates can also be used as a portal, kind of. There's Black Velvet Inferno, a spell that traps the target in an inescapable black spear, and engulfs them in searing white light. It also somehow reverted Meteora back to infancy, but you know, actually that's because of all the youth she stole, all the souls she sucked. It kicked in and gave her an extra life when she needed it the most. There's Bubble Bubble Toil and Struggle, which although we're uncertain of what it did, it was one of the spells Eclipse used on Romulus when she initially brought in Star for help. Alongside this, there's also Dreamless Sleep, which traps the target in a perpetual state of a dreamless sleep, which is why Romulus was just unconscious as he floated behind a giant purple vortex. There's Low Self-Esteem Nightmare Dream, which clouds the target's brain with a sea of unwanted negative self-speak. This affected both Romulus and Tom. Midnight Shriek, an offensive spell that blasts its target with a screeching sound. Ouroboros, which makes the target eat their own feet, or in the case we saw, Romulus' snake arms began to eat each other, but you know, snakes don't have feet, so it works. There's Spiral Hypnoslumber, which causes the target to sleepwalk. Star was a victim of this when she got caught in Eclipse and Romulus' crossfire, and personally I would use it to cure insomnia. But moving away from Eclipse, there's a Total Annihilation spell, which was invented by Solaria Butterfly, which turns the wand into a weapon of mass destruction. This is extremely powerful, very difficult to control, and only has one goal. As the name implies, total destruction. Eclipse spells within the wand dimension even said that if this spell broke loose, it would eat through every dimension until there's nothing left. Now, we're not sure who invented this next one, but it's infamous in the series, the Whispering spell, which, as we know, once recited, destroys the royal magic wand and causes it to self-detonate. As we saw in Cleaved, if there are enough magic wielders present to recite it, it is capable of destroying the realm of magic and magic itself. This is also the very first spell that Star learned, almost as if she was destined to destroy magic. It was the first spell she learned and the last spell she used. Next up, there's the Unnamed Darkest spell, which is basically the Total Annihilation spell, invented by Eclipse Butterfly and used by Moon Butterfly. While we didn't see its full potential as Moon redirected the blast, it's capable of decimating Septarians, powerful enough to negate the regeneration abilities. If it's aimed at the heart, the Septarian will be completely slain. But in Toffee's case, it just took off his finger. NBD. Now let's move on to other spells that don't really fit anywhere else. There's Annexus Ignis Edom, created by Crescenta Butterfly, which ties the user's shoelaces and simultaneously sets a building on fire. Wasn't there a SpongeBob episode with this spell?
You make a loop-de-loop and pull, and your shoes are looking.
AVM Catecum, also invented by Crescenta, which makes the user hear bird sounds and ears wherever they go. So essentially, if you want to be in a perpetual Disney film, there's Bear, which is an acronym for Brute Eager Attack Roar, invented by Solaria, which imbues a person with brute strength and eagerness to attack and takes away their fear in battle. It's one of the three parts in the Solarian metamorphosis, aka the spell that transformed Mina Lutberry into the person she is today. Alongside this is Bore, Blunt Offense Arrest Retort, which blunts a person's consciousness in battle. Last but not least, and we're going a little bit out of alphabetical order for this, is Raptor. Rage, Aggression, Panic, Torpor, Olfactory Response, which enhances a person's senses in battle. Yeah, Mina Lutberry's kinda messed up, but we already knew that. Back to Star, there's Bright Glow Pyro, which shoots flames into the air that explode into fireworks. Cotton Candy Fire Extinguish, which extinguishes flames by smothering them in pink cotton candy. I mean, hey, if it works, it works. items. There's Digitus Pygmy, created by Crescenta Butterfly, which gives the users painted fingernails and webbed fingers. Stylish. Fantastic Exit Beam, which creates an exit sign out of a beam of light that pushes the caster towards a given place's exit. There's Escape Route Blast, which fires a blast of magic that breaks through walls to create an escape route. Pretty self-explanatory. There's Crescenta's Fiducium Speculo, which imbues a user with a lot of confidence. Yeah, I think we all need that spell sometimes. There's Frumentum Delegatamenti, also created by Crescenta, which makes bland corn taste delicious. I'm assuming every Queen and Muni used this one for meals. Once more for Crescenta, there's Habaitu Auxilium, which magically picks out an outfit for the user in the morning. Again, I think we all need this spell sometimes. There's a Host Me spell by Festivia Butterfly, which turns the user into the perfect party host or hostess. There's Industria Capulis, created by Crescenta, which imbues the user with a lot of energy. God, Crescenta's just really innovative with the 9-to-5 lifestyle. There's Jelly Bean Hallucination Mist, which causes the affected person or creature to hallucinate and to see jelly beans everywhere. This was first used on Buttfrog, but saw a stronger return on Meteora. Back again to Crescenta, there's Lux Locus Scabrosis, which illuminates a dark room and makes everyone around the user horribly itchy. Alright, Crescenta has a spell that I would never use. I would never want anyone to basically get chickenpox. Are you kidding me? There's Magical Moth Chain Blast, which presumably unlocks locks or chains. There's Making the Royal Bed spell, created by Moon Butterfly, which coerces one significant other into making the bed in the morning and makes them forget they did it in the first place. Moon, I don't think I would use it, but I respect it. Mega Explosive Crystal Laser, which creates a red beam of light similar to a laser pointer, and it could probably neutralize entire planets. There's Mind Eraser, which although we're not sure of the inventor, Eclipse is clearly aware of it, and Moon actually used it on Sean, and it simply erases the target's memory and temporarily puts them in a vegetative state. There's Nightshade Disarm, created by Comet Butterfly, which disarms up to 12 of the user's enemies of their weapons. There's Nihil Fuga Manulus, created by Crescenta Butterfly, which removes a pony head's ability to fly. Oh my god, a pony head that can't fly? Terrifying. There's Raspberry Ribbon Lasso, created by Skywind Butterfly, and used by Star in the episode Wand to Wand, which creates a ribbon of light that can latch onto other objects. There's Regus Solum Lacrimae, created by Crescenta Butterfly, which removes feelings of loneliness from the user. There's Somnum Nihil Magus, which allows the user to get 8 hours of sleep in 4 minutes. Oh my god, Crescenta, I need it. I need it. There's Sparkle Slushy Juice Blast, which fires a blast of slushy juice to propel the user into the air. Sparkling Landfill Garbage Geyser, which Star casted off screen, but assumably it creates a geyser of garbage. Sparkling Spiral Noodle, which Star does cast off screen, so we don't really know what it does, but I'm assuming it's delicious. There's Tidying Up Tidal Wave, which assumably will clean up an area in an instant with a tidal wave. There's Unnamed Clock spell by Star, which projects the time of day from a clock. There's an Unnamed Dead Raising spell created by Skywind, which raises the dead. There's an Unnamed Freezing spell that Star used on Tom. It simply froze him into a giant block of ice. There's an Unnamed Illumination spell that illuminates a dark space with light without making people itchy. Thanks, Star. There's an Unnamed Infrared Detection spell that tracks the whereabouts of someone. There's an Unnamed Picklock spell that unlocks one or more padlocks. Unnamed Mind Entering spell created by Eclipsa, which allows the user to project their consciousness into another's mind, even without their knowledge or consent, as we saw with Globgore. There's an Unnamed Umbrella spell, which simply creates an umbrella. And last but not least, an Unnamed Writing spell, which inscribes words into an object. And there you have it. Throughout 2 videos, we covered every spell in Star vs. the Forces of Evil. The thing is, I want more. We need more of the series in any way, shape, or form. So please, sign the petition. A link to that will be in the description. Let us know your favorite spell in the comments below. In fact, what's your favorite dark spell? And second question, if you could use any of these spells in real life, which one would you use on a daily basis and why? Let us know in the comments below or tweet your thoughts at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can find me at AustricVlogs. We're also on Instagram. So Pillow Cypher has a little Q&A section in the intro of his new book, with the final question being, is it true you're the biological father of Phineas from Phineas and Ferb? To which Bill answers,
this interview is over!
Now this is just a cute little joke. No one could ever craft an insane theory about how this could be the biggest secret in the Disney TVA multiverse. That changes the way we look at both of these characters, right? Right? Oh. As egregious as it sounds, the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to believe that this is actually a pretty fun idea that, while would never be confirmed, could work with a lot of stretching. And not just because Phineas has a Dorito-shaped head and Bill is Well, a Dorito. After overthinking this for far too many hours, I have to share what I've been cooking. Bill Cipher does have a motive for bringing Phineas into this world, even if his plans fell apart on account of getting dumped by Linda. Join me as I break down how the beloved Phineas Flynn might have been born for the sole purpose of being one of Bill Cipher's tools. A path to unleashing Weirdmageddon. It's time to really ponder the question, is Bill Cipher really Phineas's biological father? Throughout Gravity Falls, Bill Cipher has been laser focused on one goal and one goal only: unleash Weirdmageddon. Even in the current purgatory-like state he's in during the book, he's hell-bent on getting the reader to shake the hand of his petrified corpse, buried deep in the woods of Gravity Falls, so that he can possess their body and activate one of the remaining portals on Earth, allowing the Nightmare Realm to invade once more as Weirdmageddon strikes back with a vengeance. And the Book of Bill makes it clear that Bill has had this goal long before Forward Pines was in the picture. For as long as he's resided on Earth, Bill has gone through many ponds in an attempt to access many portals, but for one reason or another, he's failed every single time. So let me ask you this. Do you really think that in the 30 years Ford was off planet, Bill didn't try to get anyone else to build a portal for him? Obviously, he still had an eye on the Mystery Shack's portal, but I don't think Bill was betting everything on Stan getting it up and running, because he knew Stan was street smart, but not necessarily book smart. It'd make things a whole lot easier if Stan did figure things out, but Bill needs to put his eggs in other baskets if he wants to get this apocalypse off the ground anytime soon. But partners just aren't that reliable. Sooner or later, they use their brain and realize that Bill is kinda sketchy, and they break things off. Ford, the shaman, the pharaoh, all on bad terms with Bill after their lives began to unravel thanks to his involvement. So he needs to take a different approach. One that, in his eye, ensures that he has undying loyalty. He wants a pawn that could love him unconditionally and want to achieve his goals. Someone he could mold into a harbinger of doom without them ever realizing it. He wants to have a child, and not just an average kid who no one understands. This kid needs to be a prodigy who puts everyone at Harvard to shame. Their naivety and familial connection to Bill preventing them from defying the Dream Demon. Because that's Papa, and Papa knows best. Now, who do we know out there in the Disney TVA multiverse that's really, really smart? Really capable? Someone who could construct something along the lines of, I don't know, an interdimensional portal? Only one kid really fits the bill. Phineas Flynn. I mean, obviously, Ferb deserves just as much credit for their inventions. They're a duo, but for argument's sake, I'll point out that Ferb usually follows orders, while Phineas is the one cooking up the plans. I know what we're gonna do today is his catchphrase. His name comes first in the show title. He's the leader, it is what it is. Phineas is not only resourceful, creative, and highly intelligent, but the dude works fast. Within the span of an afternoon, he and his brother created Winter in the middle of June, a legion of breakdancing robots, a freaking time machine, and of course, portals. Not to mention that Phineas is relentlessly optimistic and sees the best in people. And as a result, it's easy for him to be led astray and have the wrong read on situations. A great example of this can be found in the Chronicles of Meep with Mitch. This guy was bad news. An intergalactic poacher and Meep's arch rival who was ready to treat Phineas, Ferb, and Isabella as 3 more additions to his collection. But it took Phineas way too long to connect the dots, believing that Mitch was Meep's father who Meep was desperately searching for with the goal of reuniting. In reality, Meep was a security agent determined to take Mitch the bitch down. So it's reasonable to think that even without a human disguise, Bill could finesse Phineas with minimal effort. Feed him a sob story, and next thing you know, the boys are aiding an apocalypse. And just like Mabel, they wouldn't realize the gravity of the situation until shit already hit the fan. Toss the title of father into the mix, and Phineas may never come to his senses. Now, even if we have the motive all figured out, we still don't know how Bill would actually go about having a kid. He's the only surviving Euclidean, and without a physical form, he can't interact with anyone on Earth beyond the mindscape. He can lure people into making deals so he steals their body, but who would be gullible or desperate enough to make a deal with the devil? Heinz Doofenshmirtz smart anyone trying to break into the entertainment industry. Where am I going with this? Well,
a musical act goes to the top of the charts with a catchy tune and meaningless lyrics.
Do you guys remember when Lindana transcended to superstar status and won the hearts of millions across the globe? It was the 1980s. What else happened in the 80s? Oh yeah, Ford getting sent flying into a portal by his twin brother. Already, the timeline's kinda adding up. I imagine that Lindana blew up in the latter half of the decade, given that her date with Doofenshmirtz happened in the first half, and becoming a pop singer was still nothing more than a dream in her eyes. We don't really know that much about Lindana's career, other than her diva tantrums costing her everything, but if I had to guess, she met Candace and Phineas' biological father during this short-lived run. Mostly because the series is set in the late 2000s, when Candace is already 14 going on 15, and Phineas is believed to be between 7 and 12. Which means Candace was born in the early 90s, right after Linda retired. So unless she met someone as soon as she threw in the towel, immediately hit it off, and then had 2 kids with them, I'm thinking the father was in the music industry. Maybe it was the owner of the record label at the time. Maybe it was another singer or songwriter, or a producer. That part doesn't really matter. What does matter is that Linda wants to start a family sooner than later, not just because she finds the idea beautiful, but also because she has a deal with Bill. Linda wanted a successful music career, so Bill came to her in a dream and offered fame and fortune beyond her wildest dreams. But in return, she owes him the birth of a prodigy. But why would Bill set his sights on someone in entertainment? Isn't it more beneficial to keep a low profile? The book of Bill hammers in that he loves the spotlight, but even beyond that, the answer is pretty simple. Money! If Bill has a pond with a buttload of money, then they'll definitely be able to afford not only construction for a new portal, but the resources and education needed to raise a super genius. And on that note, who knows how possession could affect the genes getting passed down the family lineage? Bill has all the secrets to the universe. He's clearly a pretty knowledgeable guy. So maybe that's already setting his kids up for success. Maybe he imbued Linda with some of his dream demon magic so that his vast knowledge and his triangle-shaped body would be passed down to one of her kids. That's right, Phineas's big brain and pizza-shaped head. Perks of being quarter Euclidean, baby. And that's where we should probably talk about Candace. Much like how one kid might get the color of their dad's hair while the other gets their mom's, Candace ended up taking after her mom more than anyone else. No high IQ, no affinity for inventing stuff. She turned out pretty normal, which drove Bill crazy because he didn't want someone average, he wanted his prodigy. But he knew he finally had one the moment he laid eyes on Phineas's peculiar skull. And that's when he started tweaking. What if once Phineas was born, Bill's mask started to slip a little bit? As soon as Phineas was able to walk and talk, Bill went all in, putting more and more pressure on Linda to put Phineas through the gauntlet of quantum physics and engineering. The stress of it all was ruining her marriage and Phineas's life. She hit a breaking point and ended up defying Bill. She wanted her son to have a shot at a normal life, not wind up as some weirdo's pet project. But at this point, Lindana already threw in the towel, so there was nothing keeping her deal in effect. Bill was dumped again. With her marriage in shambles, Linda had to cut her losses and get back into the dating scene, ending up with the man who would become Phineas's real father, Lawrence Fletcher.
Okay, it was bound to happen sooner or later. Somebody finally figured out who Phineas's real dad is.
Just because someone's not your biological dad doesn't make them not your real dad. And that is what the creators of the show wanted you to know.
To be honest, we weren't trying to hide it at all.
Okay, so obviously, Bill isn't actually Phineas's dad, but again, my brain just went down a rabbit hole of utter insanity, and I just had to let this one rip. Mainly because I thought the thumbnail would be funny. And I was right!
Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk with Tom. My name is Tom, and what are ships? Why ship? Who are we shipping? What are we shipping? What, when, why, how, and where are we shipping? Today we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about ships. We're going to talk about it because that's what this show is about. We don't just talk about cartoons, we talk about stuff alongside cartoons, adjacent to it. Nothing's off limits. We talk about anything on the show. It's called Let's Talk. Nothing's off limits here. Let's talk about my vasectomy. So, I'm sure many of you have watched a show at some point, and you're like, hey, this is pretty good. And then you're like, hey, I'm gonna go online and find like-minded people here who like the same things I like. Then you go on Twitter, you go on Tumblr, you go on wherever. That's when you discover fandoms. And for some people, that's the point where they're like, man, I'm questioning my love for this thing now. And that's fine. You know, that's fine. Sometimes that happens. It's part of the game. It's part of life, you know? And I've talked about fandoms on the show before, and even though I talked about a lot of things that make fandoms toxic, I didn't talk about one thing that is very prevalent in a lot of fandoms that a lot of people really, really don't like, and some people really like, and that's shipping. I don't think I need to explain what shipping is, but just for the outsiders who don't know what it is, basically when you take two fictional characters, I hope they're fictional, because if it's in real life, it's a little weird. Please don't do that. You take two fictional characters, and then you're like, hey, I'd like to see them in a relationship with one another. Sometimes it's romantic, sometimes it's even platonic. But you want to see them in a relationship, and that's called shipping. Shipping is derived from the word relationship, and you can have all kinds of relationships, but primarily it's the romantic kind. There's shipping in just about every fandom, especially when it comes to animation. There's tons of ships all across the sea. You know, if you look at Steven Universe, there's shipping. You look at Star versus the Forces of Evil, there's definitely some shipping going on there. But you know what I want to talk about today is I want to be objective, I want to be valid. I don't really like shipping. I've never cared about shipping. It's never been something that really interests me. Just relationships in general, I'm like, I don't really care. That's why I'm single now. And also because my social circle hasn't expanded at all in the last several years, but that's not important right now. I just never really cared about shipping. In fact, I kind of didn't like it because I was like distanced from it. So I was like, I saw like all the really toxic stuff, and I'm like, oh geez, why even bother shipping? But that's what I want to talk about today. I want to discuss it objectively. I want to say, you know, is this a valid way of analyzing text? Because, you know, I analyze text. That's what we're doing. We're analyzing the media that we consume. And the question we're asking is shipping a valid way of analyzing that media? I just want to look at popular ship real quick, and we're just gonna check off some boxes. Now, I think that shipping can easily be more than just a bunch of hormonal teenage girls who haven't grown up yet and don't know any better. I think it can be a valid way of looking at the way a story is playing out, looking at the characters, analyzing the relationships between them. I think it can be valid. 100%. I don't think that there's a problem with it. At least not as far as that goes. But that's why we're going to take a look at Starco. And we're going to ask, how much does this add and how much does this take away? How much good does this do and how much bad does it do? So we're going to look at Starco and we're going to ask, does it add to the interpretation of the show? Does it add to the story? Does it help interpret the story? And does it add to the experience that people have with the show? Does it make the viewing experience better? Does it make it worse? And we're just going to go down the line with all those things. I will say, yeah, it can definitely add to the experience of the show. I think that between Star and Marco, there's a lot of really good chemistry. Honestly, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that's a romantic chemistry, but there's chemistry there for sure. In a case where you are friends with someone who is a gender who the two of you are mutually attracted to the genders that you are, I think everyone's been there at a point where, you know, they had feelings for the other person. And they're kind of wishing like, man, I don't want to be just friends with this person. I wish that I could be more than friends with this person, but also I don't want to say that because I don't want to ruin the friendship I have with this person because I genuinely care about them. Like, it's a whole thing. It is. It's a whole thing. So, like, the fact that you can look at fiction and see two characters who are in a similar position, it's relatable. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel like your situations are valid. It makes you feel like you're not alone. So I'd say, yeah, the ship in that sense definitely adds to the experience for a lot of people. And then, does it add to the interpretation of the show? When interpreting the show, does it add to it? And I think, yeah, maybe, but I think it's more in the sense that it's very simple, it's very broken down. In the case of Starco, where it makes it easier in the future for people who are younger or maybe aren't so used to trying to figure out where a story is going. And it kind of acts like muscle memory, and you kind of learn like, okay, these are some of the beats that you hit along the way. And you can kind of start learning how to predict what's going to happen in a show based on something that's following the same formula, but a very simple formula. Because let's be honest, the possibility of... Because let's be honest, I don't think that anyone's watching Star versus the Forces of Evil and is questioning whether or not Marco and Star are going to get together. I think everyone's like, yeah, they're going to get together. And then my third point of does it add to the story? I'd say so. Because the most important part of telling any story is to get people invested. And people are certainly invested in Starco. So as a result, they're more interested in the story of Star as a whole. So free for free so far, in favor of shipping. That means shipping's all good, right? Well, not exactly. Yes, this is evidence that shipping certainly has value, but we're not done yet. On the topic of experience, the way people champion Starco over Tomco or Jacko or Tomstar or whatever else is something that might go a bit too far sometimes. You know, you got over-the-top fan fiction, which is involving kids, by the way. Like, I mean, I know they're, like, technically teenagers, but those are still kids. Writing about them doing things is kind of gross. You got hostility towards anyone who might not want to see Starco happen, which, like, it's perfectly reasonable to not want to see Starco happen. Some people, they just think it's predictable that it's gonna happen, so they don't want it to happen because they don't want to show that they like to be predictable. And, like, that's understandable. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get where they're coming from, and you can disagree respectfully without, you know, attacking them for going against your ship, because your ship isn't that important, I'm sorry. Which, overall, hostility with shipping is a big reason why people aren't in favor of it. I'm sorry, my trap was injured the other day, and right now it's really bugging me. So I'm having trouble concentrating on this. And this is like an important video. And then interpretation can be a bit warped when you have this investment in one specific pairing getting together. For example, with me, I'm just kind of on the bandwagon of like, yeah, Starco's gonna happen, but that kind of got in the way of me realizing like there's no confirmation at any point in the series where we see that Marco has any feelings for Star. Like, there's implication, but there's nothing explicitly saying beyond the subtext.
Congratulations!
And in my head, like, part of me was like, wait, there hasn't? That's my own confirmation bias. So in that sense, it can warp your interpretation of a show, and it can lead you to either purposely or subconsciously misinterpreting something in order to favor your ship. You'll have a confirmation bias in favor of the thing that you're shipping. And as far as the story, the way it goes is either Starco's gonna happen and a lot of people are gonna be happy, and then some people are gonna be like, ah man, it's predictable, or it won't happen, and there are probably going to be a lot of people who support Starco who, as a result of it not happening, are going to be going after the writers, or at least I hope that this isn't the case, but this is usually what happens. For example, with Lauren Zook on Steven Universe, when she started apparently queerbaiting and hinting at Lapidot getting together, or basically kind of writing it in there, but harassing her on social media because your ship isn't happening, because you wanted Amethyst and Peridot to get together. At the end of the day, it's like she's just doing her job. When people can't do their jobs because people are too invested in their ship, that's a problem. That's an effect on the story where people will be upset over the fact that their ship didn't happen. And like, you're not helping anything. You're not accomplishing anything by doing that. And if anything, I think it's a really toxic mindset that a creator or a writer or a storyboarder owes you anything in telling a story, beyond maybe like a payoff. But there's no reason why you should feel entitled to your ship happening in canon. And I'm sure if Starco never happens in Star vs. the Forces of Evil, there will be at least a minority of people who are upset and feel entitled to Starco happening, when in reality, it doesn't need to happen. If it happens, that's awesome, but if it doesn't, you're not entitled to what you want happening in a show to happen, you know what I mean? And that's why a lot of times toxic fandoms can sometimes be associated with shipping, because we went over all of this in my other fandom video. False sense of ownership, all that type of stuff. It's very present in shipping. What I think everyone can agree on, regardless of your position on shipping, is that shipping has a lot of drawbacks for the communities around the media that we consume. But what's important is understanding is that when it's not a toxic thing, shipping can be a valid way of discussing that media. The point of this video isn't to look at something like shipping as just black and white. There's nuance to it. You can genuinely analyze a show or a book or anything based on ships. It's a device, it's a way to interpret. But what's important, and I think people in these communities can agree with me on this, is not to go overboard. Not to believe that your ship is the most important thing in the world. It's more important than my life. I think it's important to realize that at the end of the day, all we're doing is, and I said this in my fandom video, media is a way to escape from life. We watch TV and we watch movies and cartoons to escape from the stress and toxicity that we experience in the real world. So why make a community around these things and then bring all that bullshit in there? And it's especially stupid if you're going to ruin a real life friendship or relationship with someone over the fact that you don't agree on a ship. Like, it's kind of ironic. Don't bully or harass people just because they don't want to see the same fictional people end up in a relationship together. You know, just be nice. Be understanding. And if you have a ship that you're really passionate about and someone disagrees with you, just disagree. Like, you don't need to be hostile over it. Just explain your position. If you think it's problematic, explain why you think it's problematic, and leave it at that. You know, you can't control how people feel. You can't control people's tastes and opinions. You can't make anyone think or feel the same way as you. Anyways, I think that's all I got to say about this. I'm gonna go ice my trap because it's... And when is this crossover happening? Around August, not an official date, just around August. Okay, around August, the most ambitious crossover since at least the last time there was a crossover is airing on Disney Channel. My name is Tom, and one of my favorite shows on television at this moment is Milo Murphy's Law. And in August, there will be a crossover event between Milo Murphy's Law and Phineas and Ferb. Now, for those of us familiar with the world of Milo Murphy, we won't think twice about how or why this makes sense. However, Milo Murphy's Law, despite being a very well-received show, doesn't have the popularity that its predecessor, Phineas and Ferb, did. So as a result, from the outside looking in, this might seem like a bizarre mashup fishing for ratings, but it actually makes a lot of sense and ties perfectly into the canon of Milo Murphy's Law. The first thing you should know, if you don't already, is that Milo Murphy's Law is made by Dan Povenmire and Swampy Marsh, while Phineas and Ferb is made by Swampy Marsh and Dan Povenmire. So when you connect the dots, the creators are the same people. As an added bonus, the same team that made Phineas and Ferb is the team working on Milo Murphy's Law, for the most part at least. It's very rare that a show's staff will stay exactly the same for that long, but if they have, that's really impressive, honestly. The next thing you should know is that because it's the same people working on it, the two shows exist in the same universe, and I assume the same city as well. There are some connections that have been made between the shows in the past too, like in the first episode of Phineas and Ferb, they made a roller coaster that Doofenshmirtz accidentally used a giant magnet to pick up and drop somewhere else. Then in Milo Murphy's Law, it's established in a flashback that Melissa is afraid of roller coasters because on the first day of summer, like a year or two before, a giant roller coaster dropped into her backyard, with implications that the two events are connected. Low-key makes you wonder what the property damage and casualty numbers look like as a result of Phineas and Ferb. How'd their mom never turn on the news and realize a giant roller coaster dropped in the middle of a neighborhood is mysteriously similar to the one Candace claimed Phineas and Ferb built? I guess she just doesn't watch the news. Back to Milo though, how does this crossover work into the plot of the show like I mentioned? Well, in order to answer that, we need to look at the characters of Dakota and Cavendish, who are time-traveling secret agents. Their missions usually consist of It's like all the right sounds to just trip me up. Their missions usually consist of preserving pistachios for their boss, who loves pistachios, in a future where the plant went extinct. Over time, Milo's curse of Murphy's Law would end up sabotaging the missions of Dakota and Cavendish until Murphy's Law caused a pistachio plant to mutate into a pistachio man, which multiplied into a race of pistachio people who take over the world in the future. In order to stop this, Milo has to team up with Dakota and Cavendish to save the day. This is a whole arc in the show that comes back in the most recent episode, not counting holiday specials like the Halloween and Christmas special, because those aren't canon, I guess. In Fungus Among Us, it's revealed that a pistachio prince who was knocked into the time stream during their last encounter was sent back to the 1950s and started building his way up to taking over the world in the present by creating more pistachio people and putting them in rubber masks to pose as humans that they had imprisoned. So Dakota, Cavendish, Milo, and the guy who plays Dr. Zone, which is the Milo Universe version of Doctor Who, have to figure out a way to fix everything, and they have no way of traveling back in time or forward in time because all the time travel devices in that time period have been destroyed. The only glimmer of hope is the man who invented time travel, known as Dr. Time, is alive in present day, and Milo thinks maybe if they find him, he can help them develop a time travel device they can use 12 years before time travel is actually invented. So they go to his address and find Dr. Doofenshmirtz, officially connecting the Milo Murphy's Law universe to Phineas and Ferb. Now, I personally, and this is just speculating, I think that Phineas and Ferb had something to do with the discovery of time travel in this timeline. Maybe it was a collaborative effort between the two parties, especially considering it's canon that Ferb would start dating Doofenshmirtz star Vanessa, so maybe they moved in with him and Doofenshmirtz started developing time travel with the help of Ferb and maybe even Phineas as well. This is all just a theory, but it makes sense though. As cool as it would be to have Doofenshmirtz get a W for once on his own, it just seems more likely that Phineas and Ferb would at least have a hand in the process. I guess we'll find out in August though, when this special finally airs. By the way, this is also the debut for Milo Murphy's Law on Disney's main channel as opposed to being on Disney XD. So this is going to be a big event for the show to set the stage for what it could be moving forward as a main channel show. I'm just gonna close this video by encouraging you guys to watch this crossover special, and if you haven't watched Milo Murphy's Law, I highly recommend it. Make sure you tell us your thoughts down below, as well as like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell to never miss a video.
Welcome back to Mini Mayhem on the Roundtable. I'm Oshrik Vox, and Mina Loveberry has always been one of the most intriguing characters in Star, not just due to her immense power and unknown past, what caused her to mentally snap, but because she's been around forever and hasn't aged a bit. Her appearance in the episode Moon the Undaunted, a flashback that takes place decades before the series proper, has her look no different from present day. What gives? Was she born with it? Was it Maybelline? So many questions! Now we saw that Meteora was actually able to live a lot longer than she probably should due to her sucking the youth out of students at St. Olga's. Was Mina indulging in a similar practice? Well, not quite. Thanks to Star's Book of Spells, available in stores now, we have been given proper insight on Mina Loveberry's origins, and she's been alive for hundreds of years. This information comes from Solaria the Monster Carver's chapter. Now, Queen Solaria, mother of Eclipse the Butterfly, was the biggest contributor to the Mumin Monster War, believing the other queens lacked what it took to eradicate monsters once and for all. She crafted many powerful spells to further her cause. During the war, Solaria realized the Mumin army's current state wasn't suited for the onslaught they received, but she found a remedy to the situation. Solaria discovered that a combination of 3 spells, lost to time along the previous queens, could transform her Mumins into a state beyond the current army. Solaria would then go on to find pieces of these spells, locking herself away for hours to develop them further into something concrete. But like all experiments, they needed a test subject. Solaria's test subject being what she describes as a willing peasant volunteer. We know this peasant as Mina Loveberry. These spells were a 3-stage process called the Solarian Metamorphosis, consisting of Bear, or Brute Eager Attack Roar, for brute strength and eagerness to attack without the bindings of fear. Boar, or Blunt Offense Arrest Retort, for blunting of conscience in battle. And Raptor, Rage, Aggression, Panic Torpor, Olfactory Response, for enhancing all senses in battle. Permanence for all 3 spells were achieved by drinking 3 drops of honeysuckle nectar, 3 drops of lizard blood, and 3 drops of pigeon blood. Solaria then endows her volunteers with a weapon harnessing the internal flame of her own wand of aggression, which delivers a terminal blow onto enemies, especially monsters. These 3 spells are the source of Mina's incredible power. And if we go off images in the book, she was definitely one of a kind amongst the army. Sure, they were all ripped, but they were nowhere near the stature of Mina. We can make the assumption because she was the first volunteer of magical experimentation, not only does Solaria state she's her most trusted Solarian, but assumably, the effects weren't all too stable at the time. This led to Mina's seemingly immortal status. As, in Solaria's own words, may she live as long as fate allows. This is why Mina behaves the way she does. The spells were, well, permanent. She lacks fear, consciousness in battle, and all of her senses were enhanced. I'm assuming not only because she was unstable, but because the Mumin Monster War raged on for so long and she never tapped out of it, her mind became broken. She became more and more desensitized. She's not all the way there mentally. And this adds a tragic layer to Mina's character. But maybe if spells created this iteration of her life, Star, Moon, or Eclipsa could create a spell to cure her, and we could get a happy ending. Or maybe not. I just have a soft spot for crazy characters who are actually broken, like the Ice King or Old Man McGucket. Well, Mina, when it comes to modern cartoons, I guess you complete that trio. Toffee was defeated. Magic was restored. Ludo embarked on a journey to find himself. Eclipse approved her moral code after attempting to murder her own flesh and blood to protect the kingdom. Lobgor, he wants peace and unity just as much as Star and Eclipsa. So, game over? Things may not be ideal, but hey, there's no more overpowered beings out there for the Butterfly family to fight. Well, I wish I could tell you that was the case, but it couldn't be furthermore from the truth. Something is very wrong. Star's greatest threat, the mastermind pulling the strings, the one that would make even Toffee fall to his knees, is still out there, with the power to eradicate the human race with sheer strength and willpower alone. And the cherry on top, he's coming. Welcome back to Muni Mayhem on the Roundtable. I'm Oshrik Vox, and we need to have a serious talk. I know in anticipation for Star vs. the Forces of Evil's 4th season, which is still a while away, I've been pretty adamant that Toffee will return as the Septarian our heroes will have to face off in a final confrontation. Yeah, he's the true villain. Aside from Ludo's shenanigans, everything began with Toffee. Every major event in Season 2 was nothing more than a box for Toffee to check off, and everything in Season 3 was kickstarted by his defeat. And considering there's a lot more to learn with Toffee, the Book of Spells gives us some information, but not a whole bunch. And even if you're sold that Toffee is dead, with no hope of coming back by the end of his self-titled episode, the Book of Spells introduces a resurrection spell. So there's a way for him to come back. But I think Toffee's return will be a part of a much bigger thing. A much bigger villain. Well, I still believe Toffee is the endgame, at least for Star herself. After all, the Book of Spells revealed they're both royalty, more in particular, both a princess and a prince. I feel as if we still need a strong new threat, and we have one. Toffee seemed to have a very particular plan in the series, one that was immediately put to a halt as soon as Star used her magic to defeat him. But what was his plan? Who was all involved? Well, the Book of Spells begins to put those pieces together. Throughout the chapters of the book, we get bits and pieces of information revolving around a Septarian named Seth, who, in appearance, is definitely the most reptile of all the Septarians we've seen, which I believe was obviously done for a purpose. When we look at all the monsters of Star, they still have human aspects to them, even the Septarians. In fact, Rastakor, the Septarian who was previously the closest to a reptile, has a lot more of a human appearance than Seth. And although it's just a headshot, it still sends me chills. I believe Seth is illustrated like this to allude to his lack of humanity. Or humanity, is that what it would be called in this universe? You get the idea. And let me tell you, from what we've given, this goes further beyond appearance. Seth is pretty inhuman in both behavior and morals, or lack thereof. You know how I said in the intro, Toffee's actions set up everything for Season 3, and the major event of Season 2 was of Toffee's own accord, guiding Ludo through his plan by masquerading as the other half of Star's wand. Well, from what we know, it looks like Seth was the one who kickstarted all of Toffee's actions, the true mastermind of it all. Again, the information we have at our disposal is sparse, but enough to connect some dots and realize, oh my god, this will be Season 4's villain. This being is what the show has been building up to since day one. First off, Seth is ancient. He's the oldest Septarian. And you know how humans are pretty prejudiced towards monsters? Well, Seth's prejudice towards humans makes that look like nothing. In fact, I think Seth has a lot of parallels to Eclipse's own mother, Solaria the Monster Carver, the queen who wanted to commit mass genocide against all monsters. Seth wants to commit mass genocide against all of the humans. Globglor and Eclipse are described him as an extremist, and like much of the other Septarians, as we saw with Toffee, he can hold a grudge for hundreds of years. Moon's mother, Comet, described him as an old and decaying monster, with decaying and rotten hatred, and even more so, rotten ideas. Yet this isn't any problem. His morals, his corrupted beliefs, they're toxic, but for one reason or another, I'm thinking it's because of the way he presents himself and his ideas, but we're still not sure, he attracts the generations of Septarians that come after him. As you could imagine, Seth was seen as problematic by the other monsters, at least those who are working towards peace. They were absolutely terrified of him. And despite Globglor's title, Prince of Darkness, he even saw Seth as troublesome and despicable. Now we all know Toffee's pretty awful for killing Comet Butterfly, but what was Toffee's motivation? What led him to commit such an act? Well, it was probably Seth. Comet Butterfly was the queen closest to uniting the monsters and humans together. However, a rebel faction of monsters, the remnants of we saw in the episode Moon the Undaunted, was led by Seth himself. And when I say Comet came close to uniting the humans and monsters together, I mean close. The peace treaty was written up, and Comet even extended her hand to Seth peacefully, inviting him to a celebration banquet. And you know, even if Seth wasn't down for it, he could have just said, no thank you. But he took it a step further, not only rejecting the offer, but informing Comet that he wanted her dead. And he got his wish. Because moments before the treaty was signed, Comet Butterfly was murdered by Toffee. Now again, I'm just putting two and two together here, but if I had to spitball, I would have to say that Seth orchestrated Toffee to kill Comet Butterfly. And after Comet was murdered, Seth decided to go missing. Yeah, he's not mentioned after this. I told you, we have very sparse information on this man. But considering we got confirmation in the book that Toffee was a prince, is it too far to say that Seth is also royalty? Perhaps even a king? Maybe it's a self-proclaimed title, like he calls himself the King of Chaos or something. The true king of monsters, anything really. Now while he could be Toffee's father, one, if there's a resemblance, it's very thin. But two, let's account for the fact we know his ideals can attract younger Septarians. If I had to go out on a limb here, my wild prediction is that Seth either kidnapped Toffee or took him in. Seth could be more of a father figure to Toffee than an actual biological father. But also keep this in mind. If Toffee was following Seth's footsteps, just going off Toffee, Seth has to be very well-mannered, very strategic, very intelligent, and has a very dangerous wild side. I mean, we've seen Toffee snap. He's calm, cool, and collected, but as soon as it's time to throw down, he throws down. So I can only imagine how terrifyingly strong Seth is. I do find it odd that Moon just never pursued Toffee, or apparently Seth, after she defeated Toffee by severing his finger. Yeah, he's still out there, and you definitely face the consequences for that in season 3, but you're just not gonna press where the rest of the monster faction is? I have no doubt in my mind Seth is gonna be in season 4, but we have to consider that now is the perfect time for him to rise up. Moon is missing. Globgore is so crystallized, and for one reason or another, Eclipsa is not releasing him from his crystal, although it's very likely that she does not know the spell to liberate him from this prison. After all, it's been established that Romulus's crystals are terrifyingly strong. The only person we've seen break out of it on screen is Glossaric, although there is a spell in the book to pulverize such crystals. Eclipsa has the throne, but she is not in a good mental state to take care of the kingdom. And as we see from previews, the kingdom absolutely detests Eclipsa. They're not happy with her being in charge at all. With so much disorderliness and chaos, even after Moon is found, I do not see the main cast getting their life together fast enough to properly prepare against another strike from Seth. Toffee's plans may not have even been his own. Gaining Ludo's trust, becoming his right-hand man, then turning the tables on him, obtaining the wand for himself, corrupting magic, it could have all been a part of Seth's instruction. After all, Comet's murder was likely ordered from him. Seth may be aware that Toffee has failed, maybe he plans to resurrect him, or maybe he thinks he doesn't deserve to live another day. But one thing's for sure, season 4 is gonna get a little weird and a little wild. But as always, we want to hear your thoughts. How do you feel about Cephas of Tarsus? Where do you think his current whereabouts are? Will we see him face off against Star or Moon? What about Eclipsa, Globgore? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, or tune to me at Ostrich Thoughts or at Roundtable Vids. We're also on Instagram.
There's probably so many people in the comments who have this name that are like, this dumb shit. Can't think of this.
With editing, it'll be really fast-paced, so don't worry.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Roundtable. I'm Ostrich Thoughts, and today I'm joined with some of my friends, such as...
I'm Laura. What's up?
My name is Brendan.
Hi, I'm Jordan.
Friend of Awestruck Vox.
Oh my god. Okay, good enough.
Is that good enough?
Yeah. To celebrate the final season of Star vs. the Forces of Evil appearing this Sunday on Disney Channel, our friends here are gonna guess characters from the show, and they've never seen it, so just like the Steven Universe, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Are you ready, Laura?
No.
Alright, you ready?
Yes.
If the show is called Star vs. the Forces of Evil, then this is...
Star.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Star.
Yes! You can probably assume that her name is...
Moon! I know it's Star.
by joking Moon, you actually guessed another character's name.
Perfect.
But I won't say who it is.
That's not helpful.
So this is her best friend. He has a simple name. He's Hispanic, if that helps.
It looks like Brendan. Just without hair.
Jake.
No.
Oh. George?
No.
Oh no.
He looks like Todd from BoJack Horseman.
He does look like Todd from BoJack Horseman. Polo.
Ralph Lauren.
Polo.
Polo?
That's a
Ralph?
No.
No?
Are you sure about that?
Polo. So like.
As in the vaccine?
No.
I'm so confused.
Like, it's part of a phrase, like polo.
Marco.
Yes, Marco.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
you got it.
It looks like a bird. Is it a bird?
Birdman.
No. What do you think when you see this?
I think that this is what I'm gonna see when I wake up at 3 a.m. in the corner of my room.
Seagull.
Begins with an L.
Loco.
Feathers. Clucks.
Purple bathrobo.
Close.
I knew it.
There's no way I'm gonna be able to guess this one.
So some of his name is Udo.
How is that supposed to help me?
Ludo.
Ludo.
Yes.
Okay.
Alright.
Whoa. My man's just meditating over here.
So think of like a book of contents.
Glossary.
Okay. And then combine that with like kind of like a normal name that rolls off the tongue.
Glossary Gym.
No.
Glossard.
Close.
Glossaro. I don't know.
Think of like a friend of ours.
Wow. I'm a terrible friend.
I'm really bad at guessing things. I'm just finding this out about myself now. Ricky. No.
Close.
I don't know why, but the only name I could think of right now is Alan, and there's no way
Glosser
to
Alan.
combine that.
Glosser.
What is with the motion? What the?
Glossaric?
Yes.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it. Why? Why? Obviously, he's a king.
Yeah. I'll give you a
Is he
hint.
moon?
No.
Is he sun?
No.
Oh.
Think about his water like the ocean.
A river?
Yes, King River.
King River.
Yes.
River.
Yes.
Oh, I got one.
King River.
I got one. Oh my god, I got one.
River?
Yes.
Okay. That's his name?
Yes.
I like him. I like his art design.
Emily literally talked about this one before.
Yes.
And the only thing I remember her saying is that she's the funny one.
Okay.
A bodiless unicorn.
Robot unicorn?
Her name is quite literal to her design.
Is it horse? Is it pony? Is it...
You're close. You're on the right track. You got the first half of the name.
Which half?
Her nose?
No.
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 I'm really bad at this.
Pony head?
Yes.
Oh, me.
This is Star's mom and the Queen of Muni.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to.
I mean, I feel like that's my spirit animal.
The Queens of Muni have very cosmic names.
Comet.
Okay.
Also, she reminds me of Mom from Futurama with the hair.
That's a very good point, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has great mom
And
vibes.
she is a mom! I just realized that. Okay.
Oh, son? No.
She kind of looks like the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland.
Oh my god.
Is she the moon?
Yeah, she's Moon.
Yes!
Moon?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Queen Moon. Okay, so this guy right here has a normal name.
It's like an angsty teen.
Alright, so this is Emily's favorite character, actually.
I can see why.
He has a really normal name.
Is it Todd? I really want one of these.
Oh, you're so close with Todd. You're so
Really?
close.
He kind of looks like a Tony to me.
Jeff.
Just think of T names.
Todd, is it... Every teen name I've ever heard of in my life has suddenly left my brain. Toby.
No.
Man, I thought I really had that.
One syllable.
Jim?
See, the only other teen name I can think of right now is Terrence, which is definitely not it.
Bill.
And then for some reason I'm thinking Toad, but that's completely wrong.
The Mario crossover episode.
Honestly, that's what these dreams are made of.
Maybe in the name of like another host in this office.
Tom.
Yes! You got it!
I think that's the quickest one I've gotten. I'm bad at names already. Todd, is it this,
Tom.
Yes.
Okay.
She has the same name as Candy.
Is it nougat or something?
Caramel.
Skittles, Reese's.
No,
Hershey's.
not brand candy.
Salt and nougat go together. I don't know.
His name's not Salt.
Truffles?
No. That'd be a really funny name.
Gum.
No, not gum. Gum's not candy.
Fudge. No. Toffee?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that a goat?
Yes, that's a goat.
Wow.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So.
Goat? Oh.
Okay, this one I definitely think you're not. Oh, his name's on there somewhere.
Is it Chansey? Lee Chauncey?
Chauncey, is that his name?
But something before Chauncey.
What does it say?
Little.
Lil Chauncey?
Yes, Little Chauncey.
Big SoundCloud rapper.
Lil Chauncey.
Yes.
Lil Chauncey! Knew that one.
Fran.
All
Oh
right.
my god, why do I get Cruella de Vil vibes from her?
A synonym for maybe like vile or evil.
Immoral.
Dolores Umbridge.
No.
Maybe I should just whip out my dictionary.
Oh my god.
I don't even know.
Atrocious, horrendous, terrible.
You can do it, Brendan.
Oh, wait. Is the table a hint?
No! No!
Yeah, that's one I'm not gonna guess it either.
Miss Heinous.
Wow. Wow.
Miss Heinous.
Ah.
Miss Heinous.
Not today, not here, not now, in no way, shape, or form. There might be no coming back from this one. There might be no coming back from this.
It's okay, you're doing fine.
Pencil pusher. Oh my god, it's the Sailor Moon ripoff.
I mean, that's the point, yeah. All right, so her first name's just hard to guess. So it's Mina, but her last name, I'll give you a hint, it's something on her design plus a fruit.
Bunny?
You're on the right track of heart.
Heart. I was told this would be a fun time. I was lied to.
Bowberry.
No. Something on her bow, though.
Mina mint shirt. Heart apple, heart orange.
Berry heart.
No.
Love apple, love banana, love cherry.
Not heart, but
What does that mean?
what are hearts associated with?
Asses. I don't know. That's where the heart shape came from.
But what does a heart make you think of?
Love.
It rhymes with cherry.
Loveberry.
Yes! You did it!
Yeah. Blackberry, strawberry.
Ooh, you're so close.
Blueberry.
You're close to those last three.
So it's a type of berry.
Mina.
Mina Loveberry.
Yes!
I did it.
Loveberry.
Yes!
What?
Mina Loveberry.
Okay.
You gonna leave me hanging? What a daddy.
Is that like toffee after the gym?
Kind of looks like that one lizard from Spider-Man.
The lizard? You mean the lizard?
The lizard, yeah. He looks like if you were to fuse Killer Croc and Bucky into an antagonist.
That's a fair assessment.
Thank you.
He is the same species as Toffee.
Is that Adam Driver?
He's got a nice eyeball. A nice gem.
Well, what would you name this character?
Daddy.
Robot reptile.
Kinda close.
What?
This one looks like he'd be Mr. Heinous versus that other woman.
Oh my god. Rasticor. His name's Rasticor.
How the was I supposed to get that?
You weren't.
That's rude.
So this guy's name is a pun.
One Eye Willie. Oh, I was gonna say maybe it might be Igor in a play to Frankenstein, but me, I guess.
Just a zodiac, like a season.
You said a zodiac.
It's not the Zodiac Killer, but. So there's Aries, and there's Taurus, and then there's Gemini. And then the others. It's not a Gemini.
That's it.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, it doesn't look like one.
Oh, Gemini.
Yes.
Oh my god.
That's his name?
Yes. Because he's a Gemini.
They did him dirty. Aww.
Everyone always says, "Aw," but like,
so cute.
this is such a horrifying picture.
It's kind of cute.
He's so cute.
he's actually really horrifying. It's hilarious.
Why is he horrifying? Look at him.
Well, he turns into like a giant monster that eats people.
Relatable.
What is that?
I'm gonna guess his name is Boo.
For the first half of his name is Hungry, but the last name is actually like our normal name, so Hungry something.
We already established I'm great at guessing those.
A side character on SpongeBob, whose name rhymes with Gary. The lobster?
Oh my god.
Hungry?
Hungry Larry.
Hungry Larry! His name's Hungry Larry.
Oops.
Larry.
Yes!
I totally get it!
And this is what he looks like at full power.
I don't want to mess with Larry.
So all these puppies have different names, but just guess their general name, because it's pretty on the nose.
Space Pups?
No.
They look like the My Littlest Pet Shop puppy.
Oh my god. Laser puppies.
That's cute.
So this guy has a normal name. I'll give you a hint though. Sesame Street.
I
I've never watched Sesame.
But he has a normal name. Oh my god. If I give you a hint, a really obscure hint, it would be Shark Tale.
I never saw that.
Oh. Sesame Street's another hint.
I never saw Sesame Street.
What the
Oscar?
Yes! Yo! Let's go! She has a screen name. That's her legal name is a screen name.
This is what I imagine me trying to cosplay would look like.
Oh my god. She's a fan of Star, and she's 13.
Star fan 13.
Yes! Okay. You're on fire! Her name is Starfan13.
I hate these names. I want to abolish them all.
Alright, so she has a gender neutral name.
Oh man, you're gonna get me here.
Maybe think of like an actor. Rush Hour.
Why did I just think of car? Car isn't a name.
That 70s show.
Jackie.
Yes!
Okay.
Another normal name.
I don't know if I hate it more when their names are normal or when you would never be able to guess them.
Courtney, Chloe, Kylie.
I think just all the kids you hung out with in life.
Hasn't been a lot of K's.
That should narrow it down. So her name begins with K.
Karen.
No.
Kelly.
Yeah!
Really?
Yes!
Oh my god, second guess. I did it.
Is that a piece of hair? Is that a cloud?
No. He's just very hairy. And he's Kelly's ex-boyfriend, but...
I respect it.
His name is not Mr. Mustache.
No. His name begins with a T. It's close to Todd, because I know you guess Todd a lot.
I don't know why Todd is my go-to.
Give me all your T names.
Aaron.
Aaron. Here, I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
Pole.
Pole. Tad.
Yes.
Tadpole.
No, just Tad.
Tad.
Yeah,
Oh,
just
okay.
Tad. My only other hint is Lincoln Park.
See, now you're making me think too hard. Lincoln Park. Cosmic name.
Lincoln Park.
Meteora?
Yes.
First guess. I'm so good. I'm getting better. Frog.
Well, he's a frog, and he's ripped.
Is it the frog?
Yes.
I'm starting to sense a pattern with these gems here. You sure it's not Steven Universe?
Oh my god. As Laura put it, a name of affection. Like, definitely like a nickname.
Honey?
No.
Sweetie?
No.
It's a dog pet name, right?
No, not like an animal pet name.
You said it was like a pet name. First.
But like a romantic pet name.
Oh, I thought you meant like you would actually name your pet this.
No.
Cuddle.
No. Oh, that'd be really cute.
Yeah,
name.
it looks like a cuddle.
Babe.
Close.
Baby.
Yes.
Okay.
Baby. This guy right here is Ludo's younger brother. Yeah, younger brother.
Okay, he aged terribly.
Danny.
Close. He's the only one in the family who has a normal name.
Because
Starts with
Ludo was so normal.
Menace.
Man, that's not a normal name.
No. That's not his name, that's a hint.
Dennis.
Yes!
Is it Denny?
Closer.
Is it Dennis?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Isn't that hilarious?
Dennis.
Yes.
Dennis the Menace. Okay.
You did it, Jordan!
Yes!
You're going to Disney World. No. I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
That hurts.
How do you feel?
Like I still don't need to watch this show.
All right, Jordan, where can the people find you?
On Twitter.
At?
Simone Jordan. And that's it.
You did it! All 25 characters!
These writers need help.
They don't need help.
They need a lot of help. Not that I would be able to give better names. I'm just saying I don't approve.
Oh my god. How do you feel?
Like dying.
Oh. So where can the wonderful people at home find you?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Laura_Hanley.
All right, Feeny, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Prod by Feeny on Twitter.
Okay.
Should I spell it out?
No.
No.
There'll be a handle up.
In the link.
Yeah, there'll be a little graphic up.
Okay. Like somewhere around there.
All right, yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Friends Guest Star versus the Force of Evil characters. What did you think? Let us know in the comments below. Be gentle. We're all kind souls. And tune in to the final season of Star starting this Sunday at 8 a.m. Unless you're watching this after the season premiere, in which it's just kind of awkward. If you enjoyed this video, throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Consider supporting us over at Patreon or becoming a member of this channel. Have a great day, and Ostrich Fox out.